You're about to watch another exciting episode of the Dungeon Run, but did you know that you can actually be part of the adventure? Tune in live on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and you can make your voice heard and help determine the fate of our adventurers. Hope to see you there.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's the Dungeon Run. We've returned. I'm Ron Ogden, and with me, as always,
Jared K-Jack.
Welcome. We've got something very special for you this evening. Before we begin, we do want to thank all of our Patreons. Without you, we would not be able to do shows like you are about to see this evening. I'm very excited. We see all of the hype in chat, all the emojis, the gift subs, the shout outs. Thank you, everyone. I promise you we will get to all of that, but we want to give you as much time as you can with our guest this evening. So keep in mind, after our intermission, we will return to our show, bring in Morgan and Jessica, and we'll be talking a little bit about different things. So keep out with that. But before anything else, I think we go right into it, right, Jared? I think it's time because I'm so excited. I don't know about you guys, but I've been so excited all day.
We've been excited about this for a while now since we found out we were going to have Ed on the show. So let's do it.
Okay, so welcome everyone to Arcane Artistry. Well, we pull back the curtain on the creators in the TTRPG space. This is a show where we want to spotlight and focus on the individuals who dedicate their lives to bringing playable games to ours. Tonight is a special night, and Jared, I think it's time for you to tell us why.
Okay, so our guest tonight is somebody that I've been wanting to talk to pretty much since I got into Dungeons & Dragons. His name is Ed Greenwood. He is a Canadian writer, a game designer, a voice actor, and a librarian, best known for creating the Forgotten Realms fantasy world, starting at age 6. And he still works on the realms every day more than 50 years later. But over those years, he has created or co-created dozens of other settings, such as Storm Talons and Mornmist, and contributed to the fantasy settings of others, including Oz and Middle-earth. Ed's 400-plus books have sold over 40 million copies worldwide, and they've been translated into over 40 languages. Ed was elected to the Academy of Adventure Gaming Art and Design Hall of Fame. He has judged the World Fantasy Awards, hosted radio shows, acted on stage, explored caves, jousted, and been Santa Claus, but not all in the same day. He shares a house in the Ontario countryside with over 300,000 books, not counting the secret book room, which I'm very curious about. You can follow Ed on Twitter at the Edverse. That's TheEdverse. Highly recommend following him on Twitter as well. Ed, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's great to be here. Let's play.
Let's play.
Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's play with gaming. Let's play with words.
I haven't prepared a character.
Oh, no, it's okay. Curveball.
Yeah, it is Chad. It is Elminster himself. This is the Elminster. He's the man, the myth, the legend. We are super excited to have you on the show today, Ed. Sean Merwin, special shout out to him. He was the one that told us that we should reach out to you, and you were so nice to respond, and we're so happy that you're here. We know your time is limited. We know you're in the Eastern time zone, so we would love to jump right into things if you're ready.
Let's do it.
To do it. Okay. So, Ed, Ron, where would you like to begin? Yeah. I have a couple ideas, but
okay. Why
don't you take the first one?
I mean, for me, I just want to get right into it. Ed, we have such a great audience, and our fan base is so dedicated. And I know that whether they know it or not, that they're fans of yours, because we as storytellers have been inspired by you over our lifetimes. So for me, I just want to get right into the questions that our viewers have, our fans have, because so many of those questions are the same questions that I have. So Jared, do you want to start with Patreon, or do you want to start with Discord, or how do you have a question that you want to start with?
Yeah, I have a question that I think would be a good starter question. So, Ed, obviously you're a prolific guy. You've done a ton of things. How did you get started in this world? For the people that don't know, that haven't heard any of your interviews or read any of your books, how did you first discover fantasy, and how did you know that you wanted to become a writer? Was it something that you fell into? Was it something that you had a love affair of books and then decided you wanted to do it yourself? What's your origin story?
Oh boy. Okay. So I'm a shy, lonely kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My mother dies when I'm 6, and I'm raised by maiden aunts and grandmothers. I am the class nerd. I'm not a jock.
That's shocking.
Yeah, surprise. Yeah. And my father has a den crammed full of books. Old books, new books. And like every guy who collects books, he built his own bookshelves so he could cram in everything. So everything's sorted by size. And there's a lot of wartime lurid paperbacks in there. Like, The Nude Said No. I spent years searching for The Nude Said Yes and never found it. But I would read everything. And my father was an eclectic reader. He had wartime, Give One to a Friend in Uniform, murder mysteries and locked room mysteries. He had fantasies of all sorts, Merit books. He had the first edition of Lord of the Rings, filed right next to Ralph Allen's The High White Forest, novel of the Battle of the Bulge, because they were the same height, and I read everything. Oh, and The Robe by Lloyd Douglas was just along that, because that was the same height too. So I read everything. And I would constantly go pounding up the stairs saying, Dad, this one was great. Where's the next one? And I would usually embarrass the heck out of my father, who usually had a room full of important businessmen or high muck-a-mucks in NATO and so on. And I'd be holding out, Owl Hoot Trail, she was staked out nude in the sun to die, and I'd be waving it at him, and he'd be saying, well, son, well, if you want a sequel to that one, you're going to have to write it yourself, because that author died in 1932. Oh, okay. And I go pounding back down the stairs. I could read signals when my father was going, get out of here, right. Like anybody else. So I'd run downstairs, and there in the card table in the den, my Aunt Clara, who'd grown up, during the Depression, she'd taken all the brown paper bags that we bought stuff in the supermarket, and she'd slit them with her butcher knife up both sides, and then she'd iron them flat, because you didn't waste anything, or Mr. Hitler will win the war.
Mm-hmm.
And you left it with the crayons and the pens for the children to write on. So I would sit down and I'd write a terrible sequel to whatever I was reading, but I was learning how to write. I was just having fun with story.
Sure.
And it was everything. And about a little later than that, Lynn Carter started republishing all the fantasy classics at the Sign of the Unicorn's Head for Ballantyne's books. And so I got to read all of those on top of my father's collection of, Weird Tales and Seabury Quinn and all that stuff. So I was reading Harold Lamb, who was writing all these wonderful historical sword and sandal epics.
And how old were you during this time?
4 and 5 and 6.
Okay. Just so everyone knows what we're talking about here.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
I was, and I would write stuff, and my father would read it, and sometimes he'd just put it in his briefcase and take it to work and read it out to entertain the guys at work,
Sure.
which apparently led to some hilarious things, because I was writing like secret agent James Bond type stuff and science fiction versions of that. I fired my 706 and the speedster roared past me and crashed, that sort of thing. I'd be writing it, and my father would read them out loud, and one of his coworkers say, hey, Bob, that's pretty good. get the kid to write a sex scene. And then my father would say, he's 5. So,
Did you end up writing? You're so prolific writer with fantasy. I'm curious. You mentioned sci-fi. Have you done much sci-fi writing at all?
I've done a little. I've done more short stories and world building with science fiction. I work on a lot of things. I did an adventure which really brought the asteroid belt to people. For Ken Spencer did a great role-playing game called Rocket Age, and I did Bold Brigands of the Belt, which is pirates who are in the asteroid belt, stuff like that. And
Okay.
I've done work for lots of science fiction role-playing games over the year. Star Frontiers, I did an alien race, the Zethra. Well, we all chipped in, so I've done bits and pieces, what I would call tinker toys. Bits for the game master's toolbox, as opposed to a complete detailed campaign. And I've played with it over the years, but yeah, I've mainly done fantasy in various forms because you can get away with more. You don't have to follow the laws of physics.
Right.
No.
Magic gives
is
you a lot
yeah,
to do. Yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah,
Anything is possible in the world.
Magic
of
must be self-consistent
Yes.
within
yes,
the story,
yes, absolutely.
or it's the reader can sense it, and it's a cheat. But yeah, you can have magic do what you need the story need, but you just have to be fair with the reader.
Yeah.
But I was more interested in armor and dragons and so on than I was spaceships and grease monkeys.
Of course.
And
Yeah, and so that innate curiosity and then that desire to create off of that, how did that spin into eventually creating your own world and your own books and this genre and this setting that so many people now know and are in love with?
I was just writing stories to entertain myself. And I started with a daydream because I was bored in kindergarten or grade 1 or whatever it was. And I daydreamed of this snowlit a clearing on a very quiet winter night. The snow is falling softly. It's a clearing in the woods, and there's a lady with silver hair, silver as in the metal, not silver as in old lady hair, sitting harping by a tiny little campfire that she's laid herself, and you could see the eyes of all the critters in the woods who've gathered around listening. And then a second woman with silver hair, but wearing full plate armor, only covered with a cloak for warmth, comes out of the trees, obviously attracted by the music, the harping. And I wanted to know who these women were, or what was going on. And that was my sort of first glimpse of the realms. And I went on writing fantasy short stories, although Mert was my first viewpoint character. And I noticed as I was reading Fantastic magazine, which was one of my father's pulp magazines, Fritz Leiber had done Fafhrd and Grey Mouser stories. And they were little episodes. They were self-contained stories. But if you read between the lines and read more than one of them, you could see that they were little bits and pieces like jigsaw puzzles of the same world. And you were learning a little bit more about it in each. So I started writing episodic stories like that in the life of Mert. And Mert is a cross between Shakespeare's Falstaff, Nicholas Van Ryn from Poul Anderson's Pulsotechnic League, and there was a guy called Guy Gilpatrick who wrote all these stories for the men's magazines about this drunken Scottish engineer called Glencannon on this tramp freighter. As it went around the world, he swindled, lied, and cheated people, and he was always down in the engine room getting drunk on Duggan's Dew of Kirkintilloch. So I put these three characters together into this fat, foul-mouthed swindler of a guy, and he was a merchant and a moneylender, and he would always have trade enemies, and by the end of the story he'd made new enemies locally, and the authorities were after him, so he'd leave town hastily. So he was moving from port to port along what I later knew was the Sword Coast, and a year after that I knew the Sword Coast was in the Forgotten Realms. And although TSR immediately de-emphasized this because they didn't want little kids hurting themselves and lawsuits and all that. It's called the Forgotten Realms because there used to be gates, portals, between all these various worlds. And that's why we in our world have legends of dragons and vampires and wyverns and stuff, but you don't see them when you go to school or walk down the street. Well, it's because we all used to know the way through the gates, and there was a lot of traffic. And now most of the gates are closed and guarded or forgotten. We've forgotten how to get there. So I was writing those just to entertain myself throughout public school, grade school. I was bored. I still am. No.
Yeah, you got to love the motivation of sheer boredom.
Yes, I went through university as a journalist, and I was bored, and I was writing Realms novels when I should have been,
I mean, that's how I got into it too as a kid. It started because I was bored. I went to the library a lot. I read. For me, it was a fascination with gods and monsters, especially of the Greek and Roman and Norse and Egyptian, all those. So those actually, and then Aesop's fables and all that. For me, it was like, oh, I can understand the world in a different way. I can communicate with an ancient individual because someone wrote this down and told this story to me. Even if it's one individual, a group of individuals who passed it between them, over time, and the last person to tell it maybe never knew even the first person who told it and that kind of stuff. And for me, that I grew up in the time of computers, and I went, computers are cool, but we already kind of do that, and it's called storytelling. And for me, it was like that. I was sold. At that point, I could understand the world in a better way. I could write stories for myself to help me understand with what I was going through. So when I discovered D&D much later, when I was like 16, 17, it was a different thing. It was like, I didn't realize that I could like make, one of the first things I ever got was a lot of the Forgotten Realms books from AD&D. For me, it was a matter.
You mean these books?
Yes, yeah, exactly, man. Like a lot of those, exactly. It was just such a fascinating thing because it was somebody who did what I had done when I was a kid and had been doing it for a long time, and I just never knew. And for me, it was like, I'm not alone. There's other people who do this. Like, oh, whoa. I'm just, and that's why when I first met you and we talked, you were like, well, I'm just a guy who didn't go away. And for me, it's like, I get that mentality. It's like you're just a regular dude, Ed. You're a regular dude who was trying to keep themselves from being bored. And what I love about that is that gives so much, especially to our fan base out there. That's what how many of you do that? How many of you out there right now are doing the same thing that we've heard you say to us as we've done this show, the Dungeon Run? You're like, oh, are there things you can share with me so I can influence my story? And that's so, Ed, the whole point of that is to say, like, it's so refreshing to hear someone with such a prolific career just say, hey, I'm just a dude.
I'm just a dude.
Yeah.
And I would go to Gen Con and I would go, I'm not alone. My people.
Yeah.
There are more crazies than me.
Yeah. Yep. And see, I was the kind of person like
even further on the crazy spectrum than you are.
And I was like you, where I was a nerd, but I grew up in a family in which like I was expected to be a jock. And as I got older, and especially in my teenage years, I started to get big, and it was like, oh, well, now you're going to be a football player. So go be a football player. But I was like, but I'm not a football player. I'm Gandalf, man. Maybe I'm Gimli. Maybe I'm Gimli. Maybe I'm not Gandalf. I'm Gimli. I'm fine with that. It's still Gimli though. So for me, it's that. It was just writing gave me the permission to not do the stuff that society felt like I was supposed to. That's why I a lot of that for me. So to share.
On the other hand, there's this wonderful pride. I can remember at a later Gen Con, later for me, when we moved to Milwaukee from Lake Geneva, a later Gen Con. And they had Irish Fest sometimes at the same time. And they had this large convention that was all insurance companies from across America who all, and you get the hotels for a weekend. And then it's somebody else's turn. And I can remember the people who were either gathering for the next convention or holdovers from the first convention, too drunk to drive home, I don't know, who looked at all of us gamers wearing weird t-shirts and all ages and crazy hair and sort of said, who are these people? And I said to them very proudly, these are the smartest people in the world.
Yep.
So my next question for you, Ed, is okay. So you started writing these short stories. You started developing this realm, this world, and it had the backstory of the portals. Whether TSR cut that out or not, you have that rolling around in the back of your head. At some point, Dungeons and Dragons came into being, correct? Forgotten Realms came before Dungeons and Dragons
That's right.
was even a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, about a decade. Yeah.
Yeah. And then at that point, when Dungeons and Dragons first came out, and it was just the player's handbook and the monster manual, when did
It was 3 booklets.
right? Yeah, the player's handbook, right?
No, three little chapbooks that were later put in a white box. Men and Magic, whatever. There's 3 little chapbooks.
Okay.
The player's handbook, monster manual is AD&D later. But anyway.
Okay. So were you aware of the very original initial form of Dungeons and Dragons? You were.
Okay. Dungeons and Dragons came out in 1974, but unless you were playing at college near the Midwest, you didn't see it till 1975 when it sort of got out there. Yeah. And it was like 3 little booklets, and we bought them at Mr. Gameway's Arc, the long, late lamented game store in Toronto, and we read them and said, "This is really cool. We can play our own stories. We can make up our own stories around a table." And then we read it and started playing it and said, "It's just going to devolve into an argument. No, it's a great idea, but lousy execution." And then those 3 booklets were augmented by Greyhawk, Eldritch Wizardry, and a 3rd book. And as we came along through that, Greyhawk added the Thief, and it had Beholders, and it had tons of magic items. And had we started with the 3 books plus Greyhawk, we might have gone on with it from there. But as it is, I sampled it in 75 and didn't come back to it till 78 when the player's handbook came out, right after the monster manual. And I'd read the monster manual and said, "This is really cool. New monsters plus all the monsters I know from mythology, and they're all ranked against each other. This is really cool." And then when the player's handbook came out, this was Jack Vance's magic system from the Dying Earth stories, which I loved. But you impress the spell on your mind with great effort. And I mean, Gary got permission from Jack Vance to use that. And you cast the spell and you forget it, which means
you memorize the spell, and then when you cast it, it goes away.
It's out of your mind. So your magic user, your wizard, is not a machine gun that can fire endless spells. So there's a built-in limitation. And I said, from now on, everything I write in the realms is going to use these books as a skeleton, because they're going to keep me honest as a storyteller. There are limitations and there are specific powers. So I won't quote the names out of the books. I will just pretend, but this will be my skeleton, my armature. And then we all had to wait years for the Dungeon Master's Guide. In fact, if you look at your Dragon Magazine 21, where it was combined with Little Wars, there's an apology from Gary Gygax in there, and the combat tables from the Dungeon Master's Guide, because he says, "I know you're all waiting impatiently for the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's taking me longer to write it, but here's the combat tables so you can at least run games for the next year." So then we were away to the races. So I sampled it in 75, but it came back to it to start playing 1978 and onward steadily. And my home Realms group has played from 78 until now.
Wow. So you've been gaming as well as writing for that long?
Role-playing gaming. I've actually been role-playing gaming longer than that, because there is an ancient, before Napoleon, German war game.
I appreciate the distinction, by the way. I do appreciate that distinction.
Kriegspiel, which is German for war game. And it was officer training. It was train your officers in the fog of war by having them all in different rooms and having a runner who goes between them. And he's carrying written dispatches or orders. And they all have maps in front of them, but they can't see each other. So you're training officers on how to move units and not lose stuff. And everybody's done this since the Germans. Like the British Army did it when they were fighting Napoleon. You know, the American Army did it. It's basic officer training. But that was the original role playing. And then all the time I was going up through high school, we did role playing to do history classes. Like, for instance, if Canada was being put together in Confederation, we had a conquered French people and an English people, but they had to work together in a coalition government, and they were trying to put a railway across from sea to sea. And we role played that, where everybody, to put this in American terms, it's pork barrel time. I will support you through Kansas if I get this for my farmers. And everybody is role playing what they want to get out of it in return for what they can forge together. And we used to role play that sort of stuff in class. So all of that came before the full D&D experience. So yeah, I've been role playing, but yeah, I've been in role playing games as an industry since before it was an industry.
Wow. So what are your thoughts? What Ron, I'm going to keep going unless you stop me. But what are your thoughts?
Keep going, man.
What are your thoughts about the way the industry is now? I mean, the fact that things have blown up and we're in this kind of renaissance, this golden age of Dungeons and Dragons, where it's literally a term that most people have at least heard of, and more people today have actually experienced it or played it or tried it or looked into it, or they've read
turned it into an industry.
Read a fantasy book or something along those lines. Yeah. So what do you think about
it's
the way
wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a golden age, because when I first started playing, there was a religious reaction against this dangerous satanic stuff.
The satanic panic.
I was actually asked, I was actually told, I'll pray for you. And where do you get your virgins? And it was like, I don't know. Where'd you get yours? But
that's
I mean,
largely why it took me longer to get into it, is because I grew up in Bible Belt of Georgia, and it was a very no-no. It was a no-no for a long time.
And the thing is, if you grow up and something's repressed, then it's that much more. You want it that much more.
Exactly.
But it is sort of a secret club. And as things become mainstream, and we've seen this, the comic books we all loved, hey, they're making huge movies about them now, because all the guys and gals like us who love this stuff are now running movie studios, and they're finally getting the chance to watch and make what they wanted to have. So it becomes sort of mainstream. And what that does is let everybody experience it. So if you happen to be somebody who wasn't a male war historian buff nerd with a pocket protector and overweight, or wearing a t-shirt with something inappropriate like I love my semi-automatic weapons or whatever, you now get a chance. You can be transgendered, you can be female, you can be any color, you can be any culture, and there's a game now written by somebody like you for your experience. Now, the flip side of this is nobody's wallet is big enough to keep up with the entire cornucopia of stuff. But all that stuff is now out there on offer, and you can, if you can get to it, because there's still a divide between those of us who are on the internet and those of us who aren't connected. There's still that money divide, cultural divide, then it will always be there. You have a chance to see more stuff, to be exposed to more stuff, to get more new ideas, and that's what storytelling is about. And you can watch stuff on your television that I can tell you couldn't see when I was a kid, when Ed Sullivan was furious because we were seeing Elvis's pelvis gyrate, or Mick Jagger said a naughty word on air, and you naughty word, you're going, what naughty word? Well, shucky darn, sort of thing. I mean, but because the standards have shifted, but now you can get a chance to see different sort of stories, like a story like, say, Breaking Bad, or a story like Big Bang Theory. These are things that would never have been allowed on television for completely different reasons. But it's just like, nobody's going to get to watch that. No, No, we're not putting that on there. Now they are. There's
Now
with
they
the
Yeah.
multiple channel universe, so you get a chance to be exposed to different things, and that makes your life richer because none of
Yes.
us have enough time, and none of us have the money to travel. And the number of Americans when I was a kid, and I'm Canadian, so I can say this, who would say proudly to me, "Oh, I've never traveled outside the United States of America,"
Yeah.
and I'd say, "You've never drunk German beer
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
in a German university? You've never seen Stonehenge? You've never, and I would go on and on with the catalog, and they'd look at me and said, "You have?" Well, of
Yeah.
course, the thing was, there were school trips, and I was a little kid, and then my gaming took me around the world later, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
I got 5 weeks in Australia. Wow!
That's
Yeah.
And then I got to go back to
Awesome.
Australia again. I got to see the world,
Yeah.
and that makes you a richer person, regardless. And it allows you to walk in the other person's shoes and see what it's like to have
And
a
listen to
different
their
life.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And your
100%.
stories, your own stories get richer.
Right.
And so, yeah, what do I think of it? I think my poor wallet. You can hear it screaming from over here. And
I can feel that for sure.
the house around me, you probably can't see, but I'm sitting in a little hole crammed with stuff here.
Yeah.
And I keep expanding my house, and I have 3 shipping containers in the yard. One of
Wow.
them a high cube double length, crammed full of stuff, and there's still not room. And
That's
my wallet
just
is shrieking.
just so the watchers know, the reason why Ed's picture might go in and out is because he really does live in the sticks of Canada, and his internet speed is not the best. So
Luckily, we can still hear him, so that's always
Yeah.
good. That's
Yeah.
it's funny because we actually have, you said Australia, we actually have some watchers from Australia out there. We have watchers from all over the world.
We
So
do. We have
it's-
a pretty
it's
good
been-
international audience.
Yeah, it's been
awesome.
pretty exciting to hear their stories and to have them reach out and tell us, what they like about our show and what we do and what have you. So it's lovely to hear you say that.
Oh, I just love having stuff that I didn't create. Somebody else created it. So it's a surprise.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a surprise. I love that. You talk about role playing, and you've been doing it for a long time. I believe there's a quote of yours that says role playing governs over rules. And I really love this concept of where does the DM begin, the person who's the game master, who's keeping things on track in terms of the rules and logistics, and where does role playing? And for me, as we have done here on the Dungeon Run, role play is master. It is the thing that we do. It is what we love to do. But I've always been interested to, especially for someone like you, like how does that function for you? How do you look at that? Where is the line, and is it always defined, or is it very nebulous of a thing? Yeah.
I mean, I quite often used to run at Gen Cons, charity events, and I'd be asked to, hey, could you do us a Realms thing? And I'd say, sure. And I'd always say, and anybody can sit down. So if the mayor of Milwaukee or one of his bodyguards or, some little kid who's attending their first convention and their parents want to sit at the table, fine. They shouldn't need to know the game. The rules shouldn't matter. I, as the Dungeon Master, should be letting them tell the story along with everybody else around the table. That's the beauty of role-playing games. If you want case rules, zones of control, stacking limits, the Prussians cannot cross the Oder until turn 17. You've got games, great war games for that. But if you're role-playing, it's storytelling. And
Right.
I know every gaming company needs to sell you stuff. So they want to sell you splat books or rule books or a new edition that fixes their old edition. And it is the nature of all gamers to tinker with everything. And that's been since the beginning of time. Hands up, all of you people listening to this or watching this who used weapon speed factors from the player's handbook.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think I like daggers so much?
But I mean, to me, I know that I'm writing stuff to sell you if I'm writing for a gaming company, but I want it to be story aids. A non-player character that I've given you their complete background. a magic item or a spell that I've worked out exactly what it sounds like to cast it, what it looks like to cast it, what happens if you forgot your chalk, but you have charcoal. Will the spell still work? How do I do it? You know,
Yeah.
I want to do all that stuff because it's storytelling aid. And I'm giving the poor overworked dungeon master a little aid so they can have a little more time for the story and a little less time for prep or frantically flipping through books. And at the same time, I understand that a gaming company wants to sell you rules, but I don't, because I'm not a gaming company. And if you ever put me in charge of a gaming company, it would probably run financially on the rocks in a few months. Because I want to give you all the stuff for free, or I want to cram more into that box set. I want it all, but you have to pay everybody because artists starve if you don't pay them.
True.
And
we do.
I want art. Yeah, I want artists. So if I want gorgeous art of this wizard doing these and all the little lightning bolts are running from all of her fingertips, I know I have to pay for that art.
Right.
You know, but at the same time, I just want to tell stories. I want to have fun and I want to game around a table. And that's what I'm here for.
Ed, I do have a question. Did you ever live action role play? Did you ever LARP?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, my man.
And in fact, right at the beginning, okay, way back, LARPing consists of putting on armor and picking up swords and running through the ravines of my youth, hacking and shouting and yelling and scaring all the neighbors who are walking their dogs or trying to make love in the ravine. And two guys in armor come pelting past them. Oh, sorry, pray continue. but later on, when LARPing became a thing, Vampire the Masquerade and its various ilk started to come out at about the same time as there was this TV drama called Soap on American TV. And one of the older male characters in Soap thought he was invisible if he did this. And he'd stand there in the middle of scenes, perfectly visible to everybody, but thinking they couldn't see him. So, of course, we adopted that.
Yeah.
So, hi, I'm invisible. You can't see me. And we used to do that sort of thing for LARPing, causing teachers and other grown-ups or putative grown-ups to look at us and going, what is that crazy man doing? And we would say things like, that's a future leader of our country. Do not interrupt him. He's cogitating.
Can only imagine.
He's cogitating and he's trying to tell me he has opposable thumbs. That's it.
Yeah.
We would go to my LARP experience when I was growing up was we would have state parks that had like log cabins that you could stay in. And we would do that on the weekends. And it would be from like Friday at 9 p.m. We'd show up and check in. And then we would play in character starting at midnight on Friday until Sunday at 4 p.m. You were that character. If you were found on site, you were that character at that time, unless you had specific headbands or that kind of stuff. And to me, it was living storytelling, and it made me a better storyteller. It made existing in that and learning from other storytellers. It made me a better storyteller.
Did you stunt the lives of any park rangers?
Well, there were quite, I mean, there were obviously those indications where the scouts and rangers are coming in and going like, what's going on? You know, we got people talking nearby who are living and can hear you hoop and hollering in the middle of the night. And we would do things like that exist in Forgotten Realms. So, demons getting summoned in the field battle in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. And we're all screaming. That stuff has certainly happened. But in the boonies of Georgia, it's like, well, what are you going to do? Like, they have rights and freedoms just like you do. So, and they're on a state park, and we had that agreement. So we were protected in that way. But it was such an incredible experience to use role play as a way to tell stories.
I know that feeling because we used to, many Canadians have cottages. Most Americans would call them cabins, or camps if you're in Maine or whatever. But a shack in the woods, and we would go up to my cottage and play D&D and so on, and then we'd play Arkham Horror, the original board game, in the middle of the night. And if you saw a great old one in the game, we'd play it by candlelight. It was, first of all, it was the middle of summer, so we'd all strip down to our undies because it was hot, and we'd drink beer, most of which we'd brewed, and we would take the empty bottles and stick candles in them and light them and play by candlelight. But if you saw a great old one in the game, like if you flipped over the counter, you had to bang your way out of the cottage and go around the cottage going until you came around the cottage and then back in again. And this was our revenge upon all our neighbors who'd been drinking and making noise all day long and playing loud rock music. And now they were trying to sleep. And at 2 a.m, bang! And of course, they had an outhouse. If they had to relieve themselves after drinking all day, they had to go to this outhouse, which meant they had to walk towards our cottage in the dark night in the woods with us going, and yeah, that led to some interesting, what the hell were you guys doing? Blah, blah, blah.
So I have a question that actually is on our Patreon. Christiana Bruno, she wants to know, does he play or DM his own creations? I can already guess the answer on that. What types of characters do you like to play, and what do you think of D&D being so popular now versus when it started? We kind of already answered that last one, but I am curious, do you DM? Do you play? When you play, what character do you like to play most? What's your jam?
I like to play every sort of character because it's therefore new and different, hopefully, each time, as opposed to the same thing. I feel like I'm letting the party down if I'm playing a character that requires specialized knowledge. Like if I'm in a setting, not the realms, and I'm supposed to play a priest, I need to know the details of the deity and so on, or I feel I'm cheating. You know, if I can't do the prayers, if I can't follow the ethos of the god. But other than that, I don't mind what I play. I tend to DM more than I play because everybody has limited time. I'm so often playtesting things for gaming companies. In the old days, it was TSR all the time, you know, but everything. And or people want me to play the realms for them, and they want me to be the dungeon master, and I'm happy to do that. So it just works out that I do more DMing than playing. But I play everything, and I try and play many game systems. But you may have noticed I'm old, and one of the things that happens when you get old is your brain is full, and things don't stick. New stuff. So particularly when somebody says, "Hey, you want to play Travelers?" Sure. And I get out my booklets and they say, no. We're playing Travelers 7th edition, not first. And I go, I'm out. I'm not learning 7 editions. Yeah. Oh, it's just the same as first, except, oh, good. Okay, I'm in. You know, because I don't want to, because, you know, it won't stick in my mind. But again, if it's role playing, and we put role playing over rules, then it works again.
Then it doesn't matter. Right.
Yeah.
We talk about that, the rule of cool. You know, our previous DM in the dungeon run really enjoyed the rule of cool, and we use that to great effect. And I'm a big fan of that as well. I love the rule of cool. Again, it's role playing over rules, and having fun and telling good stories is kind of the key there for sure.
Is there anything that you're currently running or playing in right now that's, whether it's a home game or whatever, that you're really enjoying?
Sure. One of the things I play in whenever we can get together is Jay Scott, Lord Gosumba, runs a Greyhawk game. Okay. And I'm part of a group called 2 Drink Minimum. and we are going on expedition after expedition, and that's really fun. And last year I'm playing a Greyhawk mage, and we're building the spell list and so on, and it's great fun. And Jay always designs it so you're down to your last couple hit points. It's a really tough fight, and that's one way of role playing in D&D, and that's great fun because it's a palate cleanser from what I usually have to do, which is heavy role playing and intrigue. In the Home Realms campaign, we quite often go 4 or 5 hours and nobody draws a weapon. It's all intrigue. Prithee, my lord, dost thou know how I trow? You know, sort of thing. And people are verbally fencing, but nobody's drawing weapons, and there's no monsters per se. The monsters are your fellow humans who are doing you dirty. But I also I really enjoyed a long-running series that I did here in Canada called Quest for the Cure, because again, it's who you're playing with. and who's your dungeon master? Gary was our great dungeon master. I played with Emma Wakeland. I played with Amy Lynn Zura. It was great people to play with.
Yeah.
And I love it when I can go to Gamehole Con and play something with Alex. That would be, again, it's getting together with old friends and either having fun in the world by playing or having fun in the world by designing something together. And that I do a lot of over the interwebs. Late at night, I'll get a direct message or a Facebook message, and we're designing some little thing in the realms because somebody is working on something for a new DM's Guild product, and they'll just check in with me. So we just design a little thing.
We might actually, we talked about this, possibly doing a fun little creative exercise with you at some point if you're game, where we could create either a magical item or a magical scroll that might maybe make its way into our world that we are currently creating for season 2 of our show. So if you're down for that, we can do that a little while later in this conversation.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm down with that.
Awesome.
Or if we run long, we can do it another time. I don't mind.
Okay.
I'm easy.
Oh,
okay,
Yeah.
cool. In that case, we'll see you on Monday. No.
yeah. It's like, cool. See you next week, buddy.
Yeah, you're now part of our show, and welcome to the design team. The benefits are terrible, but we'll get you all the Dr. Pepper that you want.
Excellent. Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yes, of course, of course.
I'm
of course.
diabetic, so
Nice.
the price of sitting on my butt with my fingers on the keyboard or at a gaming table for 62 years. No.
Cool.
Anyway, sorry. Yes. Next question.
So, Ron, why don't you hit him with one of yours?
Yeah. Okay. So, so I think it's time we start talking a little bit about Forgotten Realms.
What? We're only 48 minutes into this, and we barely
Only 48 minutes in it. So there's a story that goes that you began writing Forgotten Realms when you were a kid. Is it weird that your childhood fantasy is now the same fantasy that literally millions of people around the world are enjoying and inspiring? Just to be transparent with you, Ed, a lot of my understanding of gods and God, and especially in a role playing and very deep history, comes from you. Forgotten Realms is one of my favorites. It's where I love the Pantheon a lot. So, how does it feel for like your childhood now to be? Some of it's not in your hands anymore, right? Like some of it's not even in your hands. So, like,
it's true.
What's
a lot of
that
people
like?
have taken it and run with it. That's a good question.
Yeah, well, I sold the Realms rights, and I knew what I was getting into, So I knew that, and because they told me point blank right at the beginning, things are going to change. That's fine. I burnt that bridge back then. But I mean, it does feel really cool. It does sort of rock you when you get asked to marry people. I don't mean.
That's
to officiate.
Yeah.
Or somebody brings their bouncing little bundle of joy up, and it's been named after one of your characters. I was
wow.
There was once a person.
This is Salune.
Yeah.
And my son Shar.
That happens all the time. Yeah, and in fact, I was once asked by a proud parent, their darling little baby girl, they named her Illustrial, and they said, "Now, where did you come up with that name? Because I haven't found it anywhere else." And I thought, do I tell them I took the word lust and then put? Maybe they don't want that. Maybe they don't want to know that for their, But I mean, it was like, it feels weird, and particularly when people, the gamers are now bringing me their children and their grandchildren, and they're named after Realms characters, and I go, now I feel real old. I hope I can make it back to the hotel room before I collapse. But no, it is cool, and it's cool to know, and then in some way you've changed the world. And I don't mean it in a big dramatic, hey, I'm important, but I mean, you've changed people's lives in that you've given them something to play with, and it obviously brings them joy, or they wouldn't go to conventions. That's a long, it's expensive. It takes time. You'd have to travel. They wouldn't spend money on all this stuff, so obviously it matters to them. and that's really cool.
Yeah.
And that to me it's humbling too, and it's it sort of means you've made it. You've left your mark. And I realize that this is a fool's game to try and say, oh, I'm going to leave my mark on the world and I'll be immortal. No, you won't. Ozymandias lives. But I mean, but I mean, still, it means that you did something that mattered to some people. Yeah. And that's more than a lot of people ever get to achieve in their lives.
Absolutely. And Ed, that's such a great little message there is I think you will be a legend in the people's minds that you've impacted and brought joy to them. And so, that spans a large amount of time, and your books are written. And so you will be, even when we are all long gone, you will still be impacting people and bringing joy to them. And I think that's really cool. So it's a half of what the rest of us could hope for, in that kind of impact in this world. So thank you for that, because you brought joy to my life.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And this is my reward for doing it. Having people who enjoy playing with the stuff I just thought up one afternoon.
Yep.
So we have we kind of got through our questions from our Patreon. We also have a Discord server where there's a massive barrage of questions. So I'd love to throw a couple of those your way, because I think most of them are going to revolve around Forgotten Realms stuff, since we're kind of on that subject right now. Dwayden asks, I want to know anything and everything about dwarves. Are they a dying race due to the low birth rate? Is the birth rate low only because of the low ratio of females to males? Can they save the species by mixing with other humanoid races? How important is the Morden Saman pantheon to the average dwarf? I could go on and on.
And I have one thing to add to that.
Yeah.
Do dwarven females have beards?
There you go.
Yes, here we go. That famous debate. Yes. Some dwarven females have beards. All dwarven females can grow beards. Just as in real life with humans, some of us choose to go bearded and some of us don't, and some of us shouldn't, who try. And they look like they just forgot to shave for, 3 hours. Permanent 5 o'clock shadow. I mean, but it's whatever you want to appear as. So we know that dwarven females have beards because that was decreed in the game originally, and because that explains why nobody ever saw female dwarves. They did see female dwarves, they just didn't know they were looking at female dwarves, because they were seeing short people in armor being belligerent to them with beards and long facial hair, so they assumed that they were looking at guys, and they might have been assuming wrong. And that was sort of nailed down in the D&D game before the Realms was published. So like it or not, we're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Now I realize people can change things, and
sure,
in later editions there is but you see, I never think you should throw out what previous people did. You can explain it away by you didn't know the whole truth, or you were looking at it in the wrong way. But if you just throw out the baby with the bathwater and say that never happened, it was all a dream, then you are disparaging what people loved who played before you. You are taking their dreams and trampling on them to make your own dreams. You should never tear down what went before. You should remake what went before. And if possible, you should allow them both to exist side by side.
Yes, and your previous writers, just like in improv.
Yeah.
Yes, and.
Yeah. And dwarves, I've been working extensively on I did Dwarves Deep years ago, FR11, and I've been working extensively on them because I have several friends, Jeff Thetford, who runs the Mages and Sages podcast, George Krashos and Eric Boyd, who are working together as lore masters in the Realms, who work extensively on the dwarves, and I actually have a ever-growing dwarven lexicon of the dwarven tongue that we work on as we work on projects. What's the dwarven word for this? What's the dwarven word for that? What's the elvish word? What's the drow word? What's the gnomish word?
Kaza Dune or Kaza something? The dwarven language starts Kaza, right? It's
you see, the thing is,
or the alphabet.
We have to try it. Yeah, a Dethic in the Realms, because Kaza is Tolkien, and we must we mustn't be Tolkien like that, because
Yes.
there are lawyers in the world.
Yes. Don't want to confuse those two.
Right.
Yee.
Yeah, which is also why halflings, not hobbits.
Right.
Correct.
And the reason why they're called Hin in the Forgotten Realms is I was writing the Five Shires for what was then the known world and is now Mystara, and I did a global search and replace of halflings with a 3-letter word Hin that I just made up, and suddenly I had 2.5 more pages to use and to detail the Five Shires.
Yeah.
Fair trade in my book.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Let's go to another question. So John R, I'm always curious what serves as the chief source or sources of inspiration for Ed Greenwood when he first started writing, creating the Forgotten Realms. Did real world myth and folklore play any roles? I know the answer to this, but why don't you hit this one out of the ballpark, Ed?
Sure. Well, yes, real world myth and folklore did play minor roles because I was reading everything voraciously. I was also following the dictum of, if you want to be a writer and you want to write about things, experience things. If you want to write about waking up in a graveyard in the morning, or skinny dipping in a lake at dawn, or eating an incredibly bitter fruit, or falling in a parachute, do it.
Yeah.
You can write about it better if you do it, if you experience it. You know what it smells like, you know what it feels like. You can write better. So I was trying to experience all sorts of things. Riding a horse bareback with no reins. That was fun. I survived, but
hard.
I mean,
Not easy to do.
No, thank you.
Yeah, but I was trying all those things. You know, so there was that was going into it, and there was all the stuff I was reading, some of which was regular world myth and folklore and legends, because I was reading all that, but also fantasy, science fiction, murder mysteries, romances, stuff I knew wasn't real. But I mean, I try not to have real world analogs in my Forgotten Realms. However, the published realms has a lot of them, because they were trying to take stuff they already had, like the pyramids in the Desert of Desolation, and drop them into this kitchen sink world, which was a unified game world for the 2nd edition of the game. That's what they bought the realms to be. And they warned me we're going to have pirate adventures. We're going to have Arabian adventures. We're going to have, which became El Hadim. We're going to have Oriental adventures, which became Oriental adventures. You know, we're going to just bolt in all these real world things. But I try not to put direct real world analogs in. There are some of them that will survive, like for instance, Mulhorand and so on has ancient Egyptian stuff. And the only way to square that is to say, yes, there was planar traffic through the gates and portals, so there is direct cross-world pollination, because otherwise none of it makes sense. But I mean, I try to avoid all of that because it jolts people out of role-playing and are being immersed in the fantasy world, and you always have some rules lawyer at the table who says, no, but he can't do that because Sturt weren't invented until blah, blah, blah. And you go, oh, shut up. But he's already done the damage. Your brain is already out of the story.
Ripped you out of the immersion.
Yeah, exactly. So I try not to have real world stuff. And you know, when people say, well, where are you inspired by? They're asking, where did you get your ideas from? Which to me is always, that's always like the teacher who says, where are you copying from?
Yeah.
And the answer is, I'm not. I'm living my life. I'm drinking in all this stuff like a sponge, and I'm using it. Yeah. I'm not copying anything because I don't want to copy anything. I want to tell my own story. But I can't experience something that I haven't actually experienced yet. I've eaten this pie. I've eaten raw pineapples. I've eaten this stuff, but I haven't cut open a cow and eaten the raw tripe out of its belly, because I had farming parents who said, no, don't do that. The number of parasites you'll get, you know.
I also grew up on a farm. I don't recommend for those people at home, do not do that, please.
Do not do that. Yeah. But I mean, but I'm trying to write about what I know, and I'm trying to half experience things and imagine the rest of it. And that's where my inspiration comes from. And if you detail the world in a setting with detailed characters, because a setting is really characters, not necessarily humans, but characters, more than it is geography. And if you detail them sufficiently, they start to tell the stories by the way they bounce off each other.
Yeah.
Shakespeare gave us that very
Yep.
beginning of Romeo and Juliet. Two houses alike,
Yep.
and you know, okay,
Yep.
you know, and you're off and into the middle of the feud, and they're telling
Right.
the story, and they start to generate the story themselves, and then they tell their own story, and then it doesn't matter where you drew the initial things from, it's something new.
Right.
It might be something old in tropes, but it's something new in your world, your setting, and it's doing its own thing. It has a life of its own. It feels alive around you, and it's moving in its own direction, and you sit back and let it.
Yeah. There's something you said in an interview that I watched where you were talking about in the Forgotten Realms that there's every area that you go to in the Forgotten Realms, there's a history there. No matter what's there now, something happened there 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and there's remnants of that. There's remains. So any dungeon that you go into, any castle that you explore, any ruins that you know, vanquish the orcs or undead out of or what have you, there's going to be little bits and pieces of history there as well. And that history lends itself to the dungeon having real life things like latrines, like you know, a weapons rack, because it used to have a barracks at one point, even though it's been turned into a temple of a peaceful god now. There's all of this history. My question to you is that one of the ways that you think Forgotten Realms inspires not only you, but all the other people that set their games in that setting, is the fact that no matter where they're at and what they're doing at any point, at any time, part of that history can poke its head out and become a part of that dungeon and world. So you're not just stuck in like ancient Rome, because there isn't an ancient Rome. There might be a helmet that looks like an ancient Roman helmet, but that's from another land from a long time ago, and it's been left there. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a question and a comment at the same time, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on why that is so effective for setting and story.
It is first of all, it's an adventure, an idea generator. The elements of the past that are all around us. There could be, you know, the lost pirate treasure. There could be the great magic of a fallen empire that's still all around us, deep in Mascar, you know, and where did all this stuff come from anyway? Why would anybody go to the trouble of making a cursed item? Well, maybe it wasn't cursed when it was built. Maybe it's been cursed since. There's a history built in. So there's that. There's also this makes the setting feel real. Right. And it does it on two levels. It tells you there's a past and sort of makes you hope there'll be a future. And it's the difference between you thinking that the actors are standing on the stage motionless in a tableau because the curtain hasn't gone up and the lights haven't gone up and there's dust settling on everybody's eyeballs. And the curtain goes up and your player characters walk onto the scene, and suddenly all the non-player characters start walking and talking and moving, and just like they do and then when your characters walk off, they all freeze again and it goes dark and nothing happens. So your player characters are giving life and impetus to the world, but they are the only things giving life and impetus to the world. But it feels completely different if they have the feeling like, if we go away for a month, things are going to go on happening in this kingdom. If we just walk out of our house and don't lock the door, somebody may go in and rifle the place, pillage it while we're gone. Or the wonderful thing that C.S. Lewis gave us in the Narnia books, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is where many people start the books, even though it isn't chronologically the first.
It is not.
Okay, but then the adventure happens, and at the end of it, when they come back in Prince Caspian, so much time has passed that their palace, I don't want to spoiler it, but much time has passed, and there's these poignant moments where you realize, oh my goodness, the world went on without us.
Yeah.
And that's not only something that people have to learn in real life, but it makes it seem more real because whether they acknowledge it or not, it is happening all around them. They watch all the people they knew when they were children to be old people around them, whether it's family members that we notice dying and we grieve over them, or just people in the neighborhood who aren't there anymore.
Yeah, it feels
You
real
know.
because that's how our reality works. Right?
Yeah,
that's how we
yeah.
experience our reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And so those all go into it, and the history matters. And it also means you're teaching the lesson. There are consequences.
Right.
Whereas
Your actions lead to consequences.
Yeah. Whereas if you open the Monopoly box and you lay out the board and you play the game for the 33rd time, it doesn't matter what happened in the last game. You're always starting from the same beginning.
Right.
Whereas in a role-playing game, in a campaign where there's a ongoing campaign setting, what happened in the past affects what's happening now, and what you do now matters. What your player characters do around the table matters. You are building history. And therefore, what you do has more consequence, and you feel more satisfaction because you slew the dragon. You overthrew the evil king. You did that. You changed the world. Something most of us won't get a chance to do in the real world because, unless we're John Wilkes Booth or something like that, and we do get a chance to change something, and there's usually bad consequences when we try that, we usually won't be at that pivotal moment in history where we personally get to make a difference. But we can around the gaming table, and we can experience the responsibility, the crushing weight, the joy and the satisfaction of achievement. You might have a dead-end job. Would you like fries with that for the rest of your... But around the gaming table, you can slay the undead, and you can become the king of the undead, replacing the undead king. Or you can tame and ride the dragon, and now lay waste to kingdoms. Would you like fries with that? Would you like fries with that?
Or the Fist of Helm.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that is the perfect moment for us to go into our little exercise, our creative exercise, where we make something with maybe even the chat's help a little bit on this one. So in our world, I don't want to give too much away because Morgan is in chat. And funny enough, right when you were saying actions and consequences, he was typing actions and consequences in the chat. It's a big theme in our world. So I don't want to give too much away about our world, but it's an island. It's been lost and forgotten, much like the Forgotten Realms.
Curses! We're surrounded by water.
Yeah, exactly.
We're trapped.
So there's a North Island and there's a South Island, and the North Island is more raw, primal, natural, spiritual. The South Island has more technological advancements and theory, logic, intelligence, and education.
Magic.
Arcane magic rules the land. Those are the two separate minds, we'll call them for now, or thought processes between the North and the South Island. What I'd love to do with you is either create a magical item or a spell scroll, something that maybe has been rolling around inside of your head or that just pops into your head now when I say that's, in a very general way, that's the landscape. I will also say this, much like the gods in the Forgotten Realms, our gods occasionally will mess with the people. They're not going to show up and wreak havoc and lay waste and
but they're active. They're active in the world.
They're playing around as well. So is there anything that pops into your head, or would you like me to throw something out to chat and get an idea going, and then we can build off of that?
My head immediately goes, okay, I need to know more. And I realize you don't want to give away more, but I mean,
no, I can try to answer it in a vague way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will try and ask in a vague way. So was this magic item come from the South Island and the arcane magic there, or okay? And does the North Island want to be more arcane magic like the South Island, or are they trying? Okay, so there could be an item of nature or a tribal item
Okay.
that tries to ward off the magic of the South, the arcane magic, to
Sure.
scatter it and frustrate it or turn it back on its source, so as to be able
like
to
that.
resist and stay unspoiled or unconquered or uninfluenced. So if you have a spell, particularly a spell that is locative or divinatory in nature coming from the South Island, this could be something that scatters it or gives a false image or allows you to send a false an alternative fact back to the so that okay, I'm looking for wizards who have wands or gems of power, the infinity stones or the equivalent, and this item sends back oh, it's over there in that volcano on your island, nowhere near here. And of course, that's all hoo-ha. It's just giving a false to send you on a wild goose chase. So you go away and leave us alone.
Yeah.
Moose2271 says Ed's disinformation spell.
I like the idea. I like the idea instead of it making it a spell, because then I feel like that lends itself to wizards and sorcerers, and that's more of a South Island thing anyways. I like the idea of it being an item.
Yeah.
So a magical item, because then that can tie into the gods and the spirituality that's happening in the north. And so maybe it's an item that is a boon from a god or blessed by a god, and that's what's allowing the followers of that god to remain a mystery to the arcane folks down below.
Do you have any fallen gods in this setting?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any gods that went mad?
Yes.
Yeah.
And do you have any and do you have any gods that deal in misdirection, deceit, deception?
Very
Of course.
much
Because
so.
yes.
If you had this item be a bone
Okay.
from a god of misdirection or a god that went mad, then it can be worn or carried like an amulet,
Sure.
and or placed in a place you wish to defend or keep sacrosanct from the south, and it can just warp the incoming arcane magic and make it give false or bad or misleading or chaotic results.
Changing the magic as it receives it in order
Yeah.
to misdirect. Yeah.
And therefore foster a belief in the South Island that the North is dangerous, and they do things differently there because we're casting our spells and we're not getting back the results that we should. We're getting this strange stuff.
Yeah.
And there's like, okay, maybe we should send expeditions, but they should be well armed and very careful. And of course, that therefore it means instead of like everybody saying, oh, let's get on the boat and go over there, it's like, okay, they prepared for this one expedition for half a year. Okay, now it's time to sink that one boat, guys.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
Yep.
That's
we've had
that's a little too good. Ed.
Yeah, it's a little too good, Ed.
Well, you see,
yeah.
here's what I would do. I would let the expedition come from the South Island,
Uh-huh.
and I would wait till the moment they went to bed or moved away from the shore,
Right.
and I would vanish the boat. Just take it around the island. Boat's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
What
Bermuda
happened to
Triangle it.
Yeah, you Bermuda Triangle it, and the local inhabitants are not engaging. They are fading back, falling, so they can't find anybody. But things go missing. Every time you have to go to the bathroom and you leave your spear outside because there's no room in the latrine, you come back, spear's gone.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Creepy.
Just,
Just
you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tools and weapons. It can be anything. You put your clothes out to dry after you wash them. You come back,
They're
clothes
gone.
are gone.
Mhm.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what's going on? So this North Island is full of thieves. Find the thieves, people. but I mean, you're making them doubt the way things work. And if you could have any other minor magical misdirection, talismans or relics of this god,
Right.
so that they I'm just gonna make up an example. So they cast something like a lightning bolt that goes in a straight line, and they cast it, and it goes into the woods, and then it curves abruptly and goes out at an odd angle. And it's not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Because they've put an item in there that okay, now you make the South Island invaders mistrust their own magic, at least in this area.
Yeah.
It works fine on the South Island.
Mm.
It doesn't work fine here. Maybe we better go home.
Yeah. Maybe there was a good reason that we never came up here. Yeah, absolutely. Great. There were some ideas in chat about the item as well. Someone said totem, skull of defragmentation, Greenwood's grimoire, amulet, femur of confusion, lots of amulets, which is makes a lot of sense. Reliquary, a reliquary, which is a great word. There's a lot of options here. Jared, how do you want to do this? How do we want to make the decision?
So it's sounding like, just based off of what you just said, there's one major artifact, but then maybe this religion has minor versions of that major artifact. So like maybe each of the individual priests or cleric get a piece of it. And so I was thinking what might be fun, because I feel like bones got used a lot in our previous season, in season 1. So I'd like to morph it a little bit just so it's something different. I like the idea of a god or goddess intentionally cutting their hair, and the strands of the hair, the lock of the hair is the main artifact, but strands of the hair can be taken off and given to individual clerics or individual priests, and they use that hair in their, like, maybe their holy item necklace or something. I see you rubbing your hands and smiling, so I'm gonna let you run with that idea.
No, hair today, gone tomorrow. Just going for the cheap laugh. No, actually, that's really good, because you can have hairs that lose their power or change their power if you crisp them, like if they get too close to a flame, or if you knot the hair in a certain way.
Well, now we're just splitting hairs.
Yeah, we're splitting hairs. Yeah, but if you knot the hair in a certain way, and that knot itself has power, perhaps power from another deity, so you do your Gordian knot with your hair.
That form.
And and now it has a new power. And if I undo it, the power's gone.
Yeah.
So now if I'm a South Island wizard and I capture this woman and I rip the hair from her, it suddenly doesn't have the power she was using against me, because as she realizes she's trapped and they're closing in, she unknots the hair, and then now it's just a hair.
Now it's just hair. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool too.
I like that
for sure. I also, someone said skull earlier, and borrowing that idea, Jared, is you could also have it where it's like it's a skull of maybe something that was important to the god. Maybe they inhabited it at some point, and each one of its individual teeth.
Yes.
Sure. Pull those out and give those, and that acts like like one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so they are.
If you wanted to go a little darker with it.
I was thinking that too until you said bones have been overused. I said, obviously you take out the teeth and they all go with we all do things from real life that particularly if they touch the spooky button or the creepy button.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's
a thing that I say a lot, which is there's a thin line between creepy and loving. There's a very thin line between those things. For example, a smiling couple close up, they seem very loving to each other, and then as you zoom out, one of them is holding a knife with a little bit of blood on it, and they still have the smile. That's a thin line. There's a thin line there where, like, oh, look how sweet, oh my lord. No. So there's that line, especially in horror, is often used. And so that's what I experienced in a lot of the horror films and stuff when I was a kid and reading and watching, was always these, like, well, things look nice, but they are not. They are not nice.
Now, one thing we could never use in the realms because it offended against the TSR code of conduct. That's also why they took out all the blood I had in my various material components and so on. Like a caster bites their finger and uses a drop of their own blood that has to go. Because we don't want people hurting themselves.
Right, of course.
No tears, no pus, no all of that, all of the bodily fluids
Right.
we can't use. Well, here's one on a side note. If a bone is being the powered or magical artifact or the powered item, if you cut the bone into little bone buttons or toggles that you wear on clothing, and you do it in such a way that the bone's power is retained, you could have a lot of sentient creatures from the North Island who have minor magical powers that aren't theirs, like they can't be detected, they can't be scryed, they can't be spied upon by the South Island people, because several of the buttons holding their clothing together are bones from the, and the South Island people may never find them because they're not magically active. They're magically scattering.
Right.
Sure.
So they're not doing anything active that you can go detect magic. There it is.
Right.
They're just like, something's going weird and we can never see that person. Somebody got into the camp and walked out again and we didn't see them. How is that possible?
They do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like the idea of there being misdirection involved, because I think that's always fun, because one of the things that
Mystery
is sometimes rough in fantasy D&D, especially in 5th edition, is you find a dead body in a dungeon. You wonder how that person died. You wonder who killed them. You wonder how they were killed. Oh, I'll just cast Speak with Dead, and then I will ask them those questions. Mystery solved. Game over. And I know that there are caveats on that spell, and as a dungeon master, you can be cryptic and what have you. But one of the things that I always find fun to toy with, and when we eventually move off of this subject, I'm going to let Morgan know that he can come back into chat. One of the things I love about that misdirection is it's actually more fun to give them information that leads them down another path, because they're still getting something out of the spell, instead of slapping their hand and saying, you can't cast that spell on this dead body, or they've been dead for too long, or you don't have any spell slots left, or whatever. I think it's more fun to use that a little bit of that misdirection, give them that information, give them what they're asking about, but give it in such a way to where it doesn't necessarily give them everything. It doesn't blow
give them the answer,
blow the plot,
Yes.
or blow the mystery.
Yeah, because you're always trying to leave elbow room.
Yeah.
Leave loose ends.
Yeah.
Leave things that make not just the dungeon master or game master, but the players around the table start to think, and I could use this. I could, because then all the minds are popping around the table, not just one guy making up stuff and dishing it out.
Sure.
And guy, of course, I mean in a non-gender way.
Right.
But I mean, one person dishing out all the creativity and everybody else like, yeah, entertain me.
I believe we call that the royal guy.
So I'm gonna let Morgan know that he can come back, but right now, just so everybody that's watching this in chat and what have you, there's gonna be an item that appears somewhere in the North Island that is an artifact. It's either going to be a skull or hair, one of the two. Ron and I will discuss later. Pieces of that hair or pieces of that skull, the teeth and what have you, will be used as minor items that priests and clerics can use to misguide or misdirect arcane divination or arcane spells. Right. So that's going to be an Ed Greenwood special, and we might even name it after you, depending on how that works. I don't want to give it away to the players, so it might have to be like an acronym of your name or something.
Cool.
We'll disguise it somehow.
Yeah.
And remember, story opportunity here.
Yeah.
I don't want to go raw to 7 parts on this,
right,
where they gather. But if you get 2 of those items in close proximity with each other, maybe you can do things that you can't do when there's only one of them on its own. So combinations of them can do other things.
Yeah.
Wow, unforeseen things.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome.
Actions and consequences.
Yes.
Okay. Ron, if you want to hit him with another question, I'm going to tell Morgan and Jessica that they can come back into chat.
Absolutely. We've got quite a few in here. in our Discord. The thing is, Zed, you're naturally answering a lot of them, which is incredible.
Yeah, I noticed.
So
that.
here's one for you. I've got one personally that I want to ask you. Are there time zones in the Forgotten Realms?
Yes and no. There are no formal time zones. We don't have a Sir Sanford Fleming. We don't have all of that.
Right.
And we don't have crazy little boundaries that get politically moved. So you look at a particular state and the time zone boundary goes around this community. And you know, no, because what you have is natural time zones, as in many people are rising with the dawn and going to bed with the dusk, because light requires fuel. And you may be wanting to save it, and you may be dog tired by dusk, so you just want to go home to bed. And depending on how much light is in the community, it might be dangerous after dark because you literally can't see. So in that case, you are rising and setting with the sun, your life, and therefore the natural time zones of assuming you have a rotating world with a sun moving across it, and moons or whatever.
Right.
Again, you can monkey with all that if you're world building, but assuming that's what you have, then you have unofficial time zones. In the realms, we have unofficial time zones. We only have official times with the invention of the water clock, which happened in the late 13th. Well, okay, it happened earlier on a number of occasions, but the widespread adoption of it only kicks in right around the time when the spell plague throws everything for a loop.
Right.
So you have water clocks in individual places that can maintain them, which tend to be cities like Waterdeep. And in Waterdeep already had a time system of bells that they run. Many temples everywhere in the realms, in rural areas, they maintain the time by tolling bells at certain times. And in the same way, they are marking any religious offices they have. So if you take this into the real world comparison with, say, the Benedictine monks, and you are singing services or chanting services or observing throughout the day, matins, lauds, whatever, and you signal them all. And that could be, if you have workers out in the fields, they have to hear that it's time. In the same way that the American housewife hung the cracked skillet outside the farmhouse, and when it was time for the men to come in from the fields, because if they didn't eat it, it was going to burn, she'd start hammering away, get in here and eat the stuff. Okay, so you have unofficial time zones locally on a larger scale of the bells ring, and we're closing the city gates. You're getting your 15-minute warning. You're getting your ding ding, your 5-minute warning. The gates are closing, ding ding ding. Okay, that is a form of time passage being marked for wider people. So you have those sort of time zones. What you do not have is somebody sitting down and saying, so the time now is, no, we don't have that because people aren't living lives that way. That is our invention.
Yeah. And that you aren't aware of this, but this is sort of an inside joke with our audience about time zones, because we've gone into exactly what you're talking about, which is like, yeah, there are times for things like, you know, the rise of the sun, you know, sun god worshipers probably need to be up at the more, you know, when the sun first crosses the sky or that, but there's nobody going, okay, it's 1 p.m. in Eastern Standard Time, and now we've got to start business. Absolutely. So thank you for answering that question quite seriously, because it's fascinating, especially the bells ringing. Makes sense. Churches have done that in our real life.
The bells.
Write what you know, right, Ed? Write what you know. Here's one. I don't know. Maybe you've had this question. What is your favorite dessert?
Well, as a diabetic these days, it's anything I can get away with.
What was your favorite dessert before you became diabetic?
That is a very good question. I don't think I ever had a favorite because I didn't have the chance. Up there were nicely made Nanaimo bars, nicely made creme caramel squares, and by that I mean the full pastry with the cream in it, and the dusted sugar and the various baklava type things. And there were certain ice creams I really loved, and my most favorite one of all is my grandma's cake, because she made wonderful, not too sweet chocolate cake, but it was made in umpteen layers, so there would be a layer of icing in the middle of the cake. And there were silver coins throughout the cake, wrapped in cellophane, so the metal coin wouldn't leach into the cake and make it taste terrible because you were eating copper sulfate or whatever. And so therefore you had to eat the cake carefully so as not to break any teeth, but you would always find all this money in the cake, and it was great. Wow. And there were two sorts of money. There were money that modern coins, so all the kids could keep them, and it was sort of like cool allowance. And then there was the ancient family coins from the 17 and 1800s that if you found it, you got to sing first at the thingy or go first or whatever, but you had to give the coin back for next year. And it would be baked into the cake again. And because I can never have that again, because the maker of the cake is dead and gone, that I think is one of the most precious ones. Now there are all sorts of desserts I never got to try. All these sundaes and so on. And I can tell you ones I don't like. Cotton candy. It was like
really.
Well, it was like all that screaming for this. And I mean, I didn't have a beard or mustache, and even then I felt ripped off.
It is a lot like eating sweet air. That's true. That's
it was like,
it is like
where do I get to
air.
chew? And there were lots of ice creams I love, and there were ice creams that had like Baileys in them, and and amaretto and all these, and it was like, oh my goodness, wow.
I just got some side note. I just got some peach marmalade handmade by somebody in Burbank, and it has Grand Marnier in it, and it's just like it's hard. I ate all of it in like 3 days, and most of the time jelly and marmalade sits in my fridge for months at a time, and I throw away. So now, my
nicest dessert from right now is I can get dark chocolate and robed mango pieces.
Those are
from
good.
Costco on occasion. So when they have those, I just power through those, and it's sort of like it's like, oh, this is the 4th bag I've eaten. I wonder what my blood sugar is now. Never mind.
Let's go.
JT Justice wants to know: did anyone ever eat a coin?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
No.
There was a doctor in the family.
Good.
So and no, I'm not going to go there. This is not one of those 3 weeks later tangy stories. No. You remove it. You don't allow it to pass through because they lodge.
Don't. Heavy metal not good for the stomach. Not good for the stomach.
So we've already gone over time, and we only have another like 15 or 20 minutes with you. I would like to touch a little bit more on the Forgotten Realms, if you're okay with that.
I'm fine with anything. Okay. Talk. I can talk faster.
LM Green asks, what is your favorite among the settings that you've created within the Forgotten Realms, and what is it about that specific area that makes it special to you?
I don't have a favorite. I have several favorites. And the favorites are Waterdeep, because I got to do all the gritty urban stuff and really make a city come alive with newspapers and everything. And we played there for quite a while in the original Realms campaign. Shadowdale and Evening Star, because they were both places that were bucolic country places that were physically beautiful, and they were starting places, so I got to do the teenagers wanting adventure. Be careful what you ask for. In terms
Shadowdale
of
especially.
In terms of real unspoiled beauty, the headwaters of the Unicorn Run in the High Forest, which is where the unicorns are and all the gorgeous trees, moss, and all that stuff, and crystal clear, trickling water that you can drink from and not get chlamydia or whatever. Everything's just so there's all sorts of favorite little places.
What's wrong with the water in your area?
Waterborne chlamydia, man. It's the
worst. But I mean,
I thought Canada was clean. What's going on?
Hey, he's writing what he knows.
Hey, somebody has always peed upstream.
That's true.
There is no way.
Yikes.
Especially if you're in the ocean. Fish
Yeah.
do it all the time.
Yeah, even if it's a glacier. Anyway, but I mean, no, I don't have any one favorite. But there are lots of things that, push my buttons.
Right. So Vosh Voyager wants to know, hey, Jared, do you know if Ed worked on the new Waterdeep edition? Did you work on the most recent edition of Waterdeep?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Directly, no. Indirectly, yeah. Because if you mean like Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
Yeah.
Because stuff was shared with us, and they were drawing on my Castellander lore and making new stuff. And yeah, there was some quiet behind the scenes thing.
Right on.
Very cool.
So
And-
if you were going to, I'm sure you're already in games and running games right now, but if you were going to pick up something new in the Forgotten Realms right now, what area would you like to explore? We have a map of Forgotten Realms, so the people that don't know Forgotten Realms very well can see what you're talking about while you're talking about it. But is there a specific area in Forgotten Realms right now that you feel is kind of on the tip of your tongue or in front of your mind?
Well, Alex Cameron and I have been doing glossy hardcover books in the realms that look like official source books. And
Nice.
the first one, The Border Kingdoms, was official.
Mhm.
And it's set in the Border Kingdoms. The South Shore of the Lake of Steam, just east of Kalimshan and north of the Shar. And then we did another book that I just released a few months ago called Thay, Land of the Red Wizards.
Oh yeah, very
So-
familiar with
I
that.
love the Red Wizards, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, I love those.
I challenge. I shouldn't say that because you're sitting right here in front of me. I challenge the people in chat to think of another group of villains that are quite as interesting or unique or as effective as the Thay
Wizards of
Red
Thay.
Wizards. I think they
Yeah,
just kind of hit a button for
They
a lot of
really did.
people. Yeah. I'm sure you can probably think of a villainous group.
Arcane Brotherhood.
Okay.
Yeah, well, there's lots of them.
The Zentaur Rim. Isn't
Yeah,
that-
yeah,
yeah.
Although they got Keystone copped by too many published thingies where they have to lose because good can never win. Sorry, good can never lose. Evil has to lose.
Right.
So there was
Lose,
too
yeah.
much. Yeah. Anyway, let's see what else. I also worked on other projects. Darkhold, Secrets
Okay.
of the Zentarum,
Nice.
and Elminster's Candlekeep Companion that were helmed by other people, but they called me in. So I've sort of scratched some of those itches. I do have another Volo's Guide coming out. I also participated in a thing that Steve Fiddler did with Vorpal Dice Press, the Amaroon's Almanacs. Amaroon being Elminster's, descendant. And they were like Amaroon's forests, Amaroon's deserts, Amaroon's Arctics, Amaroon's grasslands. So we did biomes all over so if you're traveling, we filled in a lot of stuff. And I got to do new monsters and new plants and new, usable medicinal plants or poisons or whatever. We got to add all that cool stuff. So I had fun with that. I do have a new Volo's Guide I'm working on with another team of designers, local Canadians. We're working on right, and it'll be a Volo's Guide to just one city, but I'm keeping it secret for now, and it should be out late summer this year
Great.
or end of the year. But it'll be a Volo's Guide like the good old-fashioned Volo's Guides,
Yeah.
but better.
Great.
Because we're gonna do one city in detail,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
just one city. Volo quite too often had to cover way too large an area of territory,
Right.
way too lightly because the word count.
So for the people that might be listening that don't know what or who Volo is, why don't you let them know what's so special about Volo's Guides?
Volo is a scamp. Volo lies a lot. Volo is an unreliable. Everything we know about the realms is unreliable narrators. Even Elminster is putting a
Yeah.
spin on things because he serves the
Right.
goddess of magic, Mistra,
Right.
and he wants you to think, But Volo is particularly unreliable in his narration. But Volo is like a prissy restaurant reviewer or theater reviewer.
He's
or both.
industrious.
Yeah, well, I mean, who says, "Oh, you don't want to see that show was so bad. I ran out of tomatoes to throw." But at the same time, he's telling you all about it So you as a dungeon master or you as a player want to go there and know enough to run it and describe it. Yeah. And he's going through the world, sort of the cook's tour. He's doing the going from restaurant to restaurant. And so if you're going to a city you've never been to before to attend a gaming convention, and he's the guide saying, don't go to that restaurant, but go to this one. And if you want to see people of negotiable affections, go here. And if you break your thingy and need a new suitcase to go home, go there. And so it's useful. And if you do it right, it can spur endless new ideas for adventures. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Bolo is
because
the
it's
Rick
like,
Steve of
right.
Forgotten Realms.
but
He's
but
the Rick
way
Steve
more,
of
but way
Forgotten
more
Realms.
entertaining.
Yes, way more entertaining. Way more entertaining.
Yeah.
Less useful. Way more entertaining.
Yeah, I like that idea, because one thing that I find hard sometimes when I'm reading either old school fantasy books or old school RPG books is that sometimes if it's written in a way to where it's just very factual and it's just telling you, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then that happened, and this is the name of this coin, and this is who rules this land, it's boring. Like it's like reading an actual history book that you would read, in I don't know, junior high.
When did my history class break out? Damn it.
Yeah. So what's fun about Volo, in my opinion, and I think you kind of hit on this, is that if it's a storyteller, or if it's somebody with an opinion, or if it's somebody that's putting a spin on things, then all of a sudden it becomes much more entertaining to absorb all of that information. It's like an entertaining storyteller or narrator versus someone that's just giving a lecture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
Cool.
yeah, I would, if TSR back in the day had let me, and they sort of called a halt to Volos because it was digest sized, book sized.
Uh-huh.
And you may have noticed the last Volos of that era, Volos Guide to All Things Magical, was back to source book, splat book size, game book size.
Right.
Because apparently people were saying, oh, I don't know how to shelve this in my gaming store because it's the wrong size. It's like a book, But I wanted them to let me carpet bomb. Cover the entire globe. And they called a halt before I could. And I've always wanted a chance to send Volo everywhere, and hopefully soon.
Well, I would love to plug that book when it comes out. So by all means, let us know, and we'll talk about it, or maybe we'll have you back on the show when it comes out, and you can tell us where it is in the Forgotten Realms and why you chose that town and why it's interesting and unique and engaging, and why it might be a good setting for an adventure. Good
setting for a complete new campaign, different from what you've seen before.
Great.
I must use this power only for good.
Indeed. So I have a question for you, Ed. A writer that I kind of grew up with as well is R.A. Salvatore, and I know R.A. Salvatore writes pretty extensively in Forgotten Realms, especially with Dritz and his crew. Do you openly, do you have a relationship with R.A. Salvatore? Do you collaborate? Yeah, I figured you probably would, being the owner of that. But can you kind of tell us a little bit about how extensive that is, or if it's compartmentalized, or all that kind of stuff? That would be great.
Bob and I are old friends.
Oh, good.
But
I love that.
When he's spinning a story, he's spinning his own story.
Right.
But what he's done from the very beginning of things, like we'd meet at a Gen Con, and we'd go and find. You see, one of the things they did at early Gen Cons in Mecca, is what they called that Milwaukee area convention center. Yeah. But they, the building had these. Okay, imagine those high school gymnasiums that have those huge dividers that can roll across them and make them little gymnasia out of them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they had a huge exhibit hall, and they had a bunch of these dividers that could go across it. Well, they all go into these little side rooms, and they fold up into that side room to get out of the way. And when you are in, this is good old-fashioned early Gen Con, everything comes in boxes. People use box cutters and rip open their boxes and stock their stalls. And then they have a whole bunch of empty cardboard boxes they have to get rid of. If they're smart, they don't trample them flat and get rid of them, because they're going to need some of them to repack stuff and take it home later.
Sure.
So the smart people go to the ends of the dividers and throw all the boxes into this little anteroom. And then it gets forgotten because it's like out of the way and you're not supposed to go in there and stuff. So what Bob and I would do at the beginning of each Gen Con is we'd make a beeline along it to one of these rooms and we'd hurl ourselves into the darkness and land on these piles of boxes, crushing them flat. And we'd lie there side by side like two, Roman senators, having grapes dropped into our mouths, how you sit on the couch aside. And he'd say, "So Ed, I'm planning to do something. Is it okay if I use this character? Is it okay if are you doing anything in here? Can you tell me anything about fruits that would still be on the trees in winter?" And we just talk.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't ask him what the story was going to be.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to enjoy it as a reader when it came out.
Of course.
But anything, I would be his sounding board and say, well, there's this, and I could write up something like that and send it to you. And later on, of course, when you've got the internet, you can do stuff, and we would phone each other more often, and we'd talk back and forth. So we would actually, mesh things. But when it comes to actual storytelling, I'm letting Bob tell his own stories with his own characters without my interference. Because we get better stories that way, and we get Bob's stories, not Bob filtered through Ed's stories.
Sure.
I want not to be the gatekeeper. I want everybody a chance, because I crossed that I burned that bridge when I was standing on it. I crossed the Rubicon. I sold the realms, so it's not my world anymore. So it's our world. So
Of course.
all sorts of writers should get a chance.
Yeah.
Elaine Cunningham, Aaron Evans, Eric Scott DeBee, Richard Lee Byers, they all write different stories when they're in their realms, and I want that.
Sure.
And
I mean, just like we were saying earlier, it makes it feel that much more real.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And lived in. If you have all those different voices telling stories in these same
And viewpoints
realms.
And just different impacts from their own, they're writing what they know, and they're just writing the different, and what they know should be drastically different than what we all know. So it's beautiful.
I mean, from the very beginning of the realms, with all the game products and many of the fictional products, I have been a lore master who just sort of feeds people. Oh yeah, there'd be crocodiles in that river, that sort of thing. I answer questions and then I step back, because I don't want to influence the story beyond giving them the lore they want. So I'll say things like, well, if you want it to be summer, this. If you want it to be winter, that. If you want daggers to be involved, this. If you want it to be magic rather than daggers, this or that. And then I step back, because I want to enjoy the story when it comes out.
Yeah, it sounds like you're helping inspire them, and then hands off after that, after the inspiration of the thing that you've already created and worked on, and then let them go with it. That's great.
I don't want to be the sort of grandfather who says to his grandson, "Here are the keys to the vet," and the grandson goes, and his eyes light up, and he walks towards the vet, and the grandfather says, "No, let me drive it for you. You just get in the pictures." Where's the fun in that? Okay.
Right.
Now, I mean, maybe the grandfather is trying to keep the grandson alive by doing that. But I mean, I don't want to be that guy. If you get the keys to the vet, you should have your chance to drive it. That's your payoff.
Yeah.
And for each one of us uses the realms in our own way. We make the realms our own. And if we're actually getting the chance to publish something in the realms. And that's why when somebody says, "Oh, don't you hate what they've done with the realms?" No, each new creative team takes the realms in a new direction, and I get to watch.
Yep.
The one thing my own world could not do is surprise me when it was just me, because everything in it I was putting there.
Right. So
now
you knew it was there.
Yeah, it's the difference between being a playwright and just writing plays and publishing them, and seeing actors put on your own play. And it comes alive, and you go, "Oh,
that's a huge tip for all those folks out there that are theater actors like Ron and I." The idea of of it being a collaboration as opposed to
A competition
a
or
one man or a one
Mhm.
woman soapbox.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I have a question that kind of piggybacks off of that. So what is your process? Like, let's say you had not written Elminster yet, right? You hadn't created the character of El, and you're sitting down to write one of these books. What is your process, and what was your inspiration to create that character? Is Elminster you? Is Elminster your life experiences? Please correct me. Tell me what the story. Tell me how that started.
Okay, so first of all, every book is different how I write it, because we're 400 odd books in now. I'm trying to do things differently every time, just so A, I don't get bored, and B, I might come across something that's better for this project. There is no one true secret way to do it. Usually, I want a viewpoint character that it may not be out of their mouth or out of their eyes. It might be more often over their shoulder that the story is being told. But I'm going to try and concentrate on usually one character. So how much that character knows beforehand, which is why, for instance, with Spellfire, Chandril is an innocent.
Right.
And we want that because we want to see. I was told, give us a tour of the realms. Well, give us a tour of the realms from the point of view of somebody who's never been away from where she grew up.
Yeah.
That works better. So, no, Elminster is not my Mary Sue. It's not me. Elminster was the unreliable narrator. It was my version of a crotchety old wizard. Most people alive today are not old enough to remember Death Valley Days on television with Ronald Reagan as the old storyteller. But the formula was, you're going to have a half hour or however long it was episode in the Wild West. And it's going to start with you staring into the eyes of the old storyteller, Ronald Reagan, who says, well, it was a hot week in the valley. And then he starts talking, and the camera goes up and over his shoulder and into the episode.
Sure.
And then at the end, it comes back down over his shoulder, and he says, well, tune in next week to see what happens in the valley then. So Elminster is sort of the framing guy who's bringing us the realms, because it's only through his machinations and magic that we are seeing the realms at all, this hidden world. Because he's jaunting back and forth and ending up at my kitchen table, eating my ice cream and drinking my amaretto, and telling us about the realms. So, and then that book that you were holding up, Elminster, the Making of a Mage, that was because Brian Thompson, dear departed Brian, died in 2008, who was then head of the TSR book department, said, okay, all you guys are doing iconic characters. Bob, yours is obviously Drizzt. Margaret and Tracy, why don't you do Istrahd? And Ed, yours is Elminster. Tell us his story. And he has to be all four D&D basic character classes in one book. And I said, oh, can he be both genders too? And he said, what? What a cool idea. So off I went, because he said, look, if I'm going to jump through all these hoops for you, let's go the whole 9 yards. Let me jump through the hoops while wearing a tutu and standing on my head.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wrote that book in 16 days.
Whoa.
Not 16 consecutive days. 8 2-day weekends, because I was commuting 100 miles to work and 100 miles back by then. So I only had weekends to sit down and go pound, 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 pound. So I did have the rest of the intervening time for my subconscious to think about it, but I didn't have time to write anything. So yeah, it was a 16-day book. And then they chopped the liver out of it. It's much shorter than it was supposed to be.
Right.
I had a full-length novel just with Elminster as a thief with Farrell in Hastaro.
Oh yeah. That's the part that I love the most, is their relationship and their interaction and what have you. Yeah. So I will say both of these books, I haven't finished Spellfire yet, but both of these books are very, very good. So if you can get your hands on these, by all means. I will also say that, just like he was saying, the voice of the writer, even though they're both Ed Greenwood, is completely different. If I picked up one of these and started reading it and I didn't know who wrote it, I wouldn't necessarily connect that it was the same writer in each of those. And so we only have a few more minutes left, but I would love to hear not only like we just talked about your inspiration for Elminster and some of these other characters, but like, how do you decide what voice you're going to use for which book? Like, if you're sitting down to write a book, does the voice kind of create itself, or do you sit down and go, I want to do this style or I want to do that style?
Usually these days, the voice comes out of the story needs. Like, I start writing and the story decides what voice I'm going to have. But I say that, take it with a grain of salt, because if you're writing professionally, you will encounter all sorts of approaches that publishers use. Like, we need a full outline for this book, or we need an outline for the catalog copy a year and a half before you're going to write it, because we have to commission a cover and we have to put it in our catalog. That doesn't matter as much as it used to, but in the old days, there was no internet. The catalogs were these glossy printed things. They had to be done, deadlines once in advance. So you were writing outlines and so on. And the only way to cheat was to actually write the entire book before you got the contract, and then just do a précis to be the outline.
Right.
Otherwise, you were literally writing something you hadn't written before. So how you write the book, how it actually turns out, is different for every project. And for instance, when I'm tweeting those Lord Wolf excerpts on Twitter, that short, snappy style that uses some modernisms is what fits Lord Wolf, rather than what I would write. Now, I did once do a hilarious fantasy mashup where I told a story from the viewpoint of a chair that's in a castle that people are coming at from, and it was 5 characters' viewpoints as they keep intersecting with each other and bouncing off of each other. And of course, it's medieval castle, it's royal family and courtiers. People are going to be daggered and so on. And I wrote each segment of the story in a different character voice. And I also did it, this one like Tolkien, almost biblical. This one like Jack Vance, very sardonic. This one like Fritz Leiber, and I did that deliberately. And of course, it doesn't quite work, shifting voices all within the same story. It's more of an exercise than it is a successful story. But I did it deliberately. And of course, by the last one, the story had told me which voice I was supposed to be telling it in, and it was none of those.
So you have to start over?
No. In that case, I just left it. But I mean, because it was a fun experiment.
Sure.
And but if I'm commissioned to write a short story, as I quite often am, there are like scores of Ed Greenwood short stories out there, some of them without my name on them, where I've been asked to write this to go in that anthology or this to go in that theme. Sometimes I'm pastiching other people. Sometimes I'm actually finishing an unfinished short story by someone else who's died or ghosted or whatever, and I'm trying to sound like that author. So I let the voice, unless that's happening to me, I let the story dictate the voice. Some of them you have time for slow nuance and cadence, and people talk to each other, and then they consider, he almost smiled when he said that, but almost, what does that mean? But in other ones, it's I drew my gun and I fired. 43 orcs fell over. It was a good day. So you tell it differently depending on the needs of the story.
So let me ask you this then. Have you ever written something, a book or a treatise or a short story or whatever, turned it in, send it in to editor, publisher, what have you, and they came back with a bunch of notes, or they wanted you to change a bunch of things, or they just ripped apart whatever you wrote? How did you handle that? How did you handle that level of criticism, or not even necessarily criticism, just demands on what your baby was, what you created?
Well, that's where you have to decide, am I a professional or not? Because a professional learns the hard way that unless you are independently wealthy and own your own publishing company or can start one, you're always collaborating.
Right.
and everybody needs an editor, even if it's only to catch your typos because you were too tired, because your eyes may gloss over those typos, just glide past and put them into print. But yes, I've also had editors who I considered less than competent, boy, this is what passes for English these days. Glad you enjoyed those Sesame Street episodes. That's where the vocabulary came from, or something like that.
Yeah.
But the professional says, okay, we want to get to a published end product as fast as possible with a minimum of ruffled feathers and fights. Which ones do I absolutely have to fight to defend because they misconstrued the meaning of the entire story, or they're twisting something, or I don't want my name on that when you've done that to it. And which battles you just let them win, and which battles you rescue. You have to decide.
Choose your darlings.
Yeah. And your consummate professional just tries to incorporate all of those suggestions / edits and come up with a story that works after it's all been changed. There's your story that you wanted to tell originally, there's the published story, and there's what the editor wanted to do in the middle. Sure. And I hate editors who are frustrated writers who are really saying, well, if I got the assignment to write the story, that's what I would write. And it's like, oh no, here we go. But I mean, if they are really saying to you, this whole pacing in the middle doesn't work, then that's gold. That's what you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you see things from your perspective, and you have in your head the story that you didn't get down on the page with these little curved squiggles of ink on paper. It's still only in your head. And they could say, that doesn't translate, or you missed something. There's something missing here. And that's where an editor is invaluable. So I just learned because I was starting to write from the very beginning to please my father and his work friends with what he took to work. I would, okay, what do you like, Dad? And he'd say, surprise me. So I would surprise him. And quite often I would do things like, I would have the tough two-fisted guy, the Doc Savage character, whose shirt is tearing off him as he punches all the Nazis or whatever it is. I would turn that into the shy woman with the horn-rimmed glasses. Certainly surprise him. And he'd go, okay, now I'm turned on. Because it was not just because of the gender thing, but because it was new.
Right.
Yeah.
It was something different.
Right.
So he was immediately interested. And he would tell me right away, it doesn't work if it didn't work. Or it would have worked better if you'd had this, son, because you can't really do that in real life. You can't jump upwards and through a window like that with somebody hanging off you. It just doesn't work. There's too much weight. Oh, okay. So how would it work, Dad? Okay. And then I would improve for next time. The editor's the same way. Hopefully they're improving you for next time. So
really a constructive criticizer, really, right? Someone who's giving you constructive criticism to sharpening your sword. If your story is a sword, they're there helping you sharpen that thing.
Yeah. You just need to make sure that you and the editor understand that it's a sword.
Right.
Not an
axe. You both believe it's a sword.
Or a saw.
Right. That you both can describe the sword accurately. Yeah.
Because if you're at cross purposes, then the result is going to be a disaster, to put it nicely.
For sure. Yeah. If you're trying to build a sword and I'm trying to build a trebuchet, we have a problem.
Yeah. Exactly. But because I'd always from the beginning, except when I was writing to just entertain my dad and his friends, I was writing through the lens of it being edited. Like one of the things I used to do to help out as a young kid is I'd type up the church bulletin. And later on, I'd type up the senior center bulletin. And you're trying to think of new ways of saying, high score in euchre was this, a good time was had by all. And you're trying to enliven that instead of repeating it for the 432nd time. So I would play with the English language and how it was. And sometimes they go, what? But most of the time they laugh because it was something different. And that's what I was trying to. So it was always being edited. So I've always known that. Now, there are times when I've insisted on something go through as is. If you're writing a letter to the editor, they should be able to trim it for brevity, but they shouldn't change your meaning or your viewpoints because it's a letter to the editor. as opposed to a work of fiction. So there are times and places where I will fight an editor, and there are also times and places where I'll fight an editor because, okay, that really is a word. Kindly use a real dictionary.
Yeah, please look up words before
yeah.
you tell me things.
Yeah.
I can totally see how that probably has been in your life.
Oh boy. Oh yeah.
I love the idea that your dad was your first editor. He was essentially the guy. I have a toddler at home right now who loves books, and when I mean he loves books, like that's the gateway into meeting him. Like if you meet somebody new and he's like, oh, that's a stranger, I don't know who that is. You know, he was raised during COVID, so he didn't really get to experience other people very much until now. And so if a buddy of mine comes over, like if Ron comes over and my son starts to get a little freaked out or worried, I'll just have Ron read a book to him, and all of a sudden they're best friends.
Yeah.
Like that's his jam.
I love it.
So the idea that your original editor was your dad, like that was the person that you told your stories to and shared that with, is touching. It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Oh, and the flip side to that was I was surrounded by all these old people. No, my grandparents, all the aunts, all the uncles, and they were full of fascinating stories. And then they started to die off.
Right.
And every time somebody died, you'd never hear those stories again.
Yeah.
And then we would start asking for favorite stories to be told, or asking more about them.
Yeah.
On the times we would see people, knowing that we were going to lose that story
For sure.
in the future. And then the richness of storytellers all around us, and the fact that everybody can tell stories, you just have to sort of nudge it out of them.
Right.
I mean, I had uncles who wouldn't say anything. And then, but you got them going, you got them angry, or you got them, you know, usually politics would do it. All of a sudden, or they would tell a story. And there are some things I know about family members I never met because they were dead and gone before I was a little kid. I had, for instance, these two people are long dead and gone. I had an Aunt Ann and an Uncle Mark. And Uncle Mark was a dry, acerbic humor who almost said nothing. And he made furniture. And Aunt Ann, his wife, was this tall woman with a broken jaw. So she had a weird shaped face.
Wow.
And yet, I learned only through a family story that she was the one who wouldn't wake up early in the mornings. So she'd be the last person down at the breakfast table in the farm. And she would always be half asleep, and she'd always stumble on the stairs and fall the last few steps. And she was always bringing the oil lamp down. And somebody would call out from the breakfast table, "Did you break the lamp?" Which told me all this stuff about my family members. Is the lamp broken? Oh, for goodness sake, you didn't care about her.
Yeah.
Is the lamp broken?
Yeah.
Okay. And of course,
That's
I'm seeing this old lady in furs with heavy makeup.
Right.
And I'd think, she would never come barefoot down the stairs with an oil lamp in one hand and a chamber pot in the other.
But that's
because
a story, though, right?
Yeah,
That's how stories work. That's how you can tell stories have actions and consequences. And years later, just like your stories that you're talking about, and years later, things are different, and you can't imagine what came before, which is why we, I think, tell stories, is to keep those things that we've learned alive in some way, shape, or form.
Well, it really rocked me to have my Aunt Clara say, in all seriousness, "You finish up that food on your plate or Mr. Hitler will win the war."
Wow.
And,
it's all stories, man.
She's not joking. She means it.
Yeah.
You waste stuff, you waste money, you cost something, you waste somebody else's time, Mr. Hitler will win the war. You know, and he's like, wow.
Wow. What a story that is. But wow. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to get into our intermission, Ed. Thank you so much for all of the information.
I cannot express how much gratitude I have that you were willing to take this time to talk to us, and all of this beautiful storytelling and information that you shared. It really means a lot to me. So thank you.
Oh, no problem. Let's do it again. This is
another.
We only just started, you know.
It's another example of you bringing joy to my life, Ed. So thank you again for bringing so much joy to my life. Without you in it, there'd be less joy in my life. So thank you again for being here with us.
My pleasure.
So,
This is what I do it for. All you guys.
Oh,
Shared
thanks.
joy. Joy
Yeah.
shared is joy increased.
That's right.
exactly,
That's right.
exactly. Well, thank you again. Chat's saying thank you, and there's lots of hearts and emojis and what have you. And I think they all really enjoyed this as well. And this is something that's going to live on as well in our on our YouTube, so other people can watch it too. So that'll be fun to look back on this at a later date as well.
Indeed.
We will definitely take you up on your offer on coming back at a later date. So
absolutely,
thank you for that.
Okay,
yeah,
my pleasure.
We are going to take a brief intermission, and then when we come back, it's going to be Jessica, Ron, Morgan, and myself, and we're going to talk a little bit about season 2. Do a little bit more revealing and spoiling. Just because we think that'd be a great place to end tonight's show, and then tune in next week as well. Like I said, we're coming back after intermission, but next week we're going to be doing a cool down, Ron and I, where we will be doing more world building, and we'll be incorporating everything that we talked about tonight and everything that Ed shared with us. So that will be on the docket as well. So thank you.
All right, we'll be back after this brief intermission. Stick around. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Hey, it's us.
Hey.
What? Can you believe that?
I
Can you
can't.
believe
I honestly
what just
can't.
happened?
So
I-
cool.
I'm in love with that man.
I seriously, I
That
think
was-
we all are.
That was easily the most fun I have had just talking to another human being over Zoom, mind you.
Whoa.
Not in person, but in
I won't
Zoom.
take that
Yes.
personally, Jared.
There's
We've
some
talked a
bitterness.
lot over Zoom.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, I take it back. I take
Go
it
ahead.
back.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
No, but like, dude, he's so nice,
I mean,
and
you know
he's
what?
so smart, and he's so like
Just
supportive,
articulate,
and inspirational.
just put everything just so like
Yeah.
I love the bit about like I could never own a gaming company because I would just want to give everyone
Give it for
everything.
free.
Yeah. Same.
And
Oh, man.
but I talk about it. It's so validating and incredible to just and really inspiring and heartwarming to hear creators of the genre that you feel so strongly about echoing things that I had just thought,
Right.
and was like D&D is really just about writing aids. It's just about spurring your, when we talk about character creation, it was just, I created James because I was just looking through the Great Old One Warlock section and there's this little bit that I was like, oh, that's an interesting idea. And then my mind just took it and ran off with
Yeah.
it. That's
Yeah.
all
Yep.
D&D is. It's just kindling for the fire inside your mind.
Right.
And
And it gives
it's
you a
great.
framework for storytelling.
yeah, man, so
Totally.
good.
Totally.
Yeah,
And-
just to hear him put that so succintly, I was just like, wow. Yep, that's exactly what
I
it is.
really hope you guys never watched this part of the interview, and thank you for jumping out of chat when you did. But he is incredibly good at taking very little information that we gave him to work with and just sort of spiraling off into something that was unique and interesting and worked with what we gave him and was cool, and it worked so well with what Ron and I have already planned. Like it was almost like he knew what we were kind of laying down already when it comes to season 2. So
It was
the fact-
amazing. Even
Yeah.
in the few seconds before I took my headphones off, I could
Yeah.
see him just click into it that fast. I was
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like
that's
he was
awesome.
like, okay, I'm gonna stop being haha funny man for a second, and my brain switches over to, oh, we're doing world building.
I'm a fighter pilot. Here we go.
I am the best in the world at this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh.
Oh wow.
Whoa.
You do
Yeah.
this for a living. Got it.
Yeah. And now I know why all of these famous people, writers and game designers and stuff, call him up or email
Right.
him and go, hey, Ed, I want to throw something, past you. Let me know what you think. And he was like, oh, yeah, R.A. Salvatore and I used to hang out
Bob. He called him Bob. I would like to
sorry.
say. Yeah. If you
Bob
can't call
Bob.
R.A. Salvatore
Yeah.
Bob, then
No.
you.
Bobby. Hey.
Bobby boy, how you doing? Eh?
Yeah. So Bob and I are hanging out at Gen Con, and we go into the cardboard box room,
That was
which I didn't even know that was a thing.
Those
but I guess
stories.
It's a thing. Yeah.
just
And
the thought of just
Yeah.
catching Ed and
Yeah.
Bob
Yeah.
making their
And he
way
was
into
like
it.
telling me about this Dritz guy. I don't know why he's from Brooklyn all of a sudden, but he is. And he's like, yeah, I like
Bobby
that.
Salve.
Yeah, Bobby Sal.
Incredible.
That's gonna be my character for the next fiasco is Bobby Sal.
Bobby Salve.
Sold. Oh my God, that was so lovely though.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was.
Oh,
It
we're
was so
having him
good.
back. We're having him
Yes.
Yes.
back for sure.
I think he would love it. You get the
Yeah.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And talk about giving with your time. Like the
Yeah.
dude's on East Coast time zone, and he just sat down for 2 hours to just talk about
Right.
whatever we wanted to talk about. Like we could have brought up anything.
Yeah.
Also, I would like to point out, I think Morgan, you might have even pointed out to us, but it happened early for Jared and I when we were in the room before the show. Is man drinks straight out of a Dr. Pepsi bottle, 2 liter,
2 liter.
Like Dr. Pepper
Dude.
2-liter bottle.
Dude.
I messaged
Dude.
Ron and Jared. I was like, he's a legend.
Yeah.
legend. I'm on an interview show, 2 liter, great.
Zero protection.
Yes. Love it.
It's a Canadian thing. It's a Canadian
legend.
For sure. I'm sure.
That reminds me
Immediate
so much
legend.
of my college days when I used to drink Mountain Dew out of a 2-liter bottle.
Oh,
Hey,
God.
you too.
That was not good for me. That was
No,
not
not
a healthy
still
choice.
isn't.
Not a good practice.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I mean, yeah, I think we wanted to hop in and just continue kind of telling people like what's coming with campaign 2. We've been like ducks on the surface of the pond lately. There's a lot happening that you're not seeing, my friends.
Yes,
Yeah.
there is. And when he says that, he's even being minimalist about it. There is so much going on right now. There is so much going on.
If we are being somewhat reserved about it, it's because we know we have so many things to share very soon.
Yeah.
I can say, without going into specifics, we've started to, like we've already said, that me, Katie, and Jessica will be returning cast members. We are working on some new additions to the cast that we are very excited about, and I think our audience will be very excited about it too.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say
Greenwood's
for right now.
Start commuting down to Los Angeles so that he can be one of the main cast members.
Let's
of the
not
show.
get people too excited. Come on now. We can't deliver
Elminster's
Ed
rolling
Greenwood.
up.
Yeah, it's like, congratulations, your character is Elminster in our season 2. Let's do this.
Yeah, we're gonna have an NPC. It's just an old wizard that shows up and he knows a lot of things and he's got a lot of food crumbs, all over his jerkin and what have you. And he's gonna give you some interesting information at the top of the show.
I thought about this too. I was reminded of Ready Player One, the guy who created the world in Ready Player One, who was also a wizard. You could tell that man in the book is based off several different people. Like he's kind of based off Steve Jobs, but he's also based off all these other people. And I was a little bit in this conversation, I was like, I think he's also based a little bit off Ed Greenwood.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. At all.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, speaking of things that we can quote unquote spoil,
Yeah,
not
let's do
really
it.
spoil, but some secrets we can share to get your salivary glands, your storytelling salivary glands going.
Very nice, good one.
We are going to talk a little bit. We have revealed before that Jessica Lynn Parsons will be playing
very talented.
She's quite talented.
Here she's the new Xbox.
That's
girl.
what I hear too.
What?
What? If you haven't
Salvatore
checked it
glands.
out. Salvatore
well
glands.
done, Bosch Voyager. Well done.
Woof.
That's off to you, Bob. So as had been revealed, Jessica Lynn Parsons will be playing a cleric, and we have identified that we have created a brand new domain for Jessica.
I'm actually just excited that we're going to have a real healer in the party.
Really? Tell me about
Though
it.
it will be played by Jessica, so all bets are off.
All bets are
What's that supposed to mean? Come on.
You don't play
Heal
wizards
you
how
with pain.
Jessica plays zero class how you would expect them to be played. That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Oh, you're injured? We're gonna have to amputate. Yeah. I got a
amputation is
-3
part
on
of my
my medicine
subclass.
skills.
It's
So
like I've been
just-
firing guiding bolts every round for the last 10 rounds. I got nothing left.
So we have identified that the domain is called the Storm Song domain. So it will be a singing-based domain. I can go right into it, or do we want to cover anything else?
No, I would love for you guys to be dungeon master and player, and Morgan and I will just sit here and make sarcastic comments.
All right, so Storm Song domain starts like this. Storms are the things of destruction and life. So can be said of music and song. In the land of our Forgotten Isle, these two domains clash into a beautiful cacophony of danger and calm. What is a storm anyway but the song of the mother of storms? So, we're going to start with, at level 1, your bonus proficiencies, Jessica Lynn Parsons, will be nature and performance skills.
Ooh.
And in addition, you are never considered without a holy symbol because your voice counts as your holy symbol.
Sick.
Yeah.
So you can never be disarmed unless, of course, your voice is stolen from you. But that is how
We're
you
throwing that
will.
out there? We're throwing that out there right now.
Hold on, you didn't think I could take that from
all right.
you? You
DMs
didn't-
are revealing secrets already over here. I'm like, first thing I need to get magical item that can capture my voice that I keep on me at all times.
I was gonna say, I played a cleric who had their holy symbol tattooed on the palm of their hand before, and it was like daring my DM to chop it off at any one time.
Yeah, for real.
The tongue is a removable organ. Just throwing that out there.
It is. It is.
Again.
It is.
Giving away your secrets as DMs right now. I'm seeing your full scale of evil right now.
Indeed. So,
This is amazing.
also at first level, you will get something called Sparrow's Willowaw. And Willowaw is a real word. If you're not familiar with what a Willowaw is, it is a type of storm that blows off of mountains biome into the ocean. So that is what a Willowaw is. It is typically a very windy storm, typically. Your deity is devoted to the swiftness and purity of sparrows. Starting at first level, as you so devote yourself to your deity, so does the deity devote you to the protection and friendship of the birds, granting you the innate ability to speak and understand sparrows. Additionally, the natural swiftness of the favored bird is also infused within you, granting you a bonus to your initiative equal to your wisdom modifier.
I'm
Just
foreseeing
to
a lot of perception checks to see if she can find sparrows in her future.
Yeah. yeah.
Are there any
So he
sparrows?
tells me that the sparrows will find me.
Here's the deal. Like Ron and I kind of hashed this one out because he and Jessica kind of sort of created this whole subclass, and then he showed it to me and he was like, "Hey, so what do you think of this? Is this balanced? Is this not balanced?" And I love the idea of birds being involved because she's from the North Island, so the nature and the spirituality thing kind of go hand in hand already. And I like the idea that maybe she has a connection to a specific animal, and since we were talking about a god that she worships that sort of has some trickery aspects, some song aspects, I was like, a bird. That makes perfect sense. Then we were like, oh, but we don't want to go down the Meep road again. We don't want to beat the Phoenix thing to death. So what's a bird? No, I'm serious. This is the conversation we had.
The conversation we had, word for word.
When Ron and I were talking about the character, we had a very similar comment where I kept running into themes that were similar to Fahima, and I was like, we can't, gotta steer away from it.
Yeah. So what's a bird that is not like a phoenix at all? What's a bird that is commonplace? That's almost borderline boring.
She was going to be an ostrich cleric.
No,
Just
penguin. A penguin is the opposite.
penguin cleric.
A snowbird that can't fly.
Yeah, snowbird that can't fly.
We could do that. We could change it. We could just
You could totally make it penguins
instead
if
of-
you and penguins. I'm fine.
Yeah. But the other idea was I wanted it to be a bird that's so commonplace that it could be like a spy. It could be somebody that gives you information. It's somebody that you can talk to. It's like the messengers and the spies of this god or this goddess.
Crows are noticeable, right? Like
Right.
that, often crows and ravens are used as spy types of birds, but they're also like they stand out. So it was more of a thing that we wanted to, that is very, very widespread and easy to overlook because there are a lot of them. So
Every day I walk my dog, I notice the crows.
right.
But the sparrows are everywhere.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and you don't know
And
them. You don't know them.
There's like 100 different species of sparrows, and they're so prolific and they're so all over our earth, let alone in the world that we're creating. So yeah.
Indeed.
Somebody wrote Jess is the Lord of the Sparrows.
Lord of Sparrows.
JT
The
Justice.
Lord. I think they mean the singer
Level 20
in that
fight.
case, the Lord of Sparrows.
Lord of Crows versus Lord of Sparrows.
And Ron and I recently had a little bit more of an in-depth conversation about how this subclass is going to work. There's still a lot of things we have to work out, which I
Sure.
think will kind of come out in session 0. But what I did after this conversation was I YouTubed sparrow songs because I wanted to know what a sparrow sounds like. And there is like, I mean, I'm not a bird watcher. I really would not be able to pick out a sparrow. I don't think in the woods, unless they all sounded like the top 3 that I found. But they do have sort of a melody that I want to try and
Sure.
incorporate into
Cool. Very cool.
some songs
Yeah,
if I can.
I love that.
Absolutely. Love that for sure. We will also be introducing probably spells as we go forward
Yeah.
for all of that. I'll go over a little bit about what your domain spells are. But before we do, I'm not going to reveal everything about the domain because I want there to be some juicy bits that you get to discover as we move forward. But I will at least tell at least tell you the channel divinity.
Yeah.
So starting at second level, you get channel divinity. It's called Storm's Herald. Starting at second level, you can use your channel divinity to spur your allies with the speed of an oncoming storm. As an action, you present your holy symbol, your voice. Any amount of creatures up to your proficiency modifier within 30 feet are granted a boon. This boon offers the creature the choice of an extra action, bonus action, movement, or reaction that must be used before the end of your next turn. Yeah. If that action is used to attack, it is only one weapon attack only. If that action is a spell, it follows the same rules as multiple spells in a turn, and this ability can only be used once
can't be
per
like
combat.
2 third-level spells.
Correct. It has to follow. One of them has to be a cantrip.
So you could do a spell and a cantrip.
Giving someone an extra reaction, though, could be huge.
Yes, exactly. And then this ability can only be used once per combat, even if you have more than one channel divinity available.
Yeah.
And that's to keep it, to make it balanced a little bit there. So
is that something you and Jared talked about to keep it balanced?
There's a lot of game balance stuff in there.
Yeah. I don't envy you that task. Yeah.
Well, that's where it's really good. Where I'm doing a lot of that. Where I'm like, okay, I kind of know what's overpowered and not.
Right.
Like I can get a good gauge of that. But it's always, this is one of the benefits of being a co-DM is like, hey Jared, I think this is right. And he goes either, yeah, that's good, or, well, what about this? And then it solves it, and it's like, oh, this is so refreshing and easy. Like, it's great. So I will now go a little bit into your domain spells.
Actually, before we move on to that, I just wanted to say that the Storm's Herald really plays in beautifully with the theme that I want to, maybe I shouldn't say theme, but the story arc that I want to play with for my character. Kind of talking about this comparison between Fahima and my next character. Have I revealed her name yet? I don't think I have.
I don't think you have.
I have revealed her pronouns though by saying this right now.
Yes.
Wanting that story arc to be different and to explore different parts of my own personality and a story that I want to tell. We can get more into this later once the show begins and we know more about my character, but this spell encompasses a big part of what I want, where I want my character to start.
Cool. Great.
And that's I hope you feel that, but I'm listening to you when you tell me things that you like and want.
100%.
And I think that's kind of, if for those of you who are at home in our DMs, again, that goes back to Return to Lazy Dungeon Master. Like, build your stuff around your characters, and storytelling becomes easier because now they're inspired to do so.
Yeah, it feels good to have your DMs love your character. I mean, I know when I started the dungeon run, as you all know, I worked with Jeff to develop a lot of Fahima because I didn't know her backstory, so I had to be, constantly checking in with him. And yeah, it feels good to have your DMs be like, oh, this is a cool idea, I'm on board, and then they come up with ideas to help flesh that out even more. It feels like a really collaborative, creative process, so it's really cool to be part of that.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so now I'm going to go into your domain spells. The way that these are, I don't have them in level order, so I'm just going to read out what they are, and you'll be able to determine what level they come because of the level order.
These are the spells she automatically doesn't have to prep every day.
Every cleric in every domain has a list of extra spells that clerics don't normally get that come from other spell casting domains or that kind of thing that are considered.
Well, sometimes they're clerical spells, but they're just clerical spells they don't have to prepare because they're always prepared.
Right. And for those who don't know the difference between like a wizard or a warlock and clerics and druids, and paladins all have to technically prep their spells at the beginning of the day. They have a list, and they're like they get a select number of spells they get to prep every day. And so it's a job every time after you have a long rest, but it gives you a little more flexibility, which is cool.
Yeah. The divine spellcasters generally, they don't have to learn spells. They're offered all possible spells and then decide which ones they're going to cast for the day.
Yeah.
Right. And then all possible spells for the cleric or for the druid.
But
with
super fun as somebody
Right.
played a wizard.
Yeah, you
But-
don't have to worry about collecting spell
Right.
scrolls or
I
like
know.
begging your dungeon master, please,
Yep.
can I
Well-
run across somebody with a lightning bolt spell?
Yeah, I get new spells I get to choose from every day, and it's more limited.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the benefit
Yeah.
of playing a sorcerer too. Is there's not like a million zillion spells to choose from and to keep track of in your spell book.
Right.
That and warlocks, same. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. But with clerics, each domain is specific to the domain. You get auto ones that you don't have to prep, that you automatically prep every day. Each domain
Yep.
is different for that.
Yep.
Correct. So at first, and typically in the cleric world, you get domain spells at first, third, fifth, seventh, and I believe ninth, and they relate to the first circle, second circle, third circle, fourth, and fifth circles of spell casting. So levels, circles. I mean by levels. Sorry, we were
Yep.
talking about Red Wizards of Fey, and my brain went back to circles. So I apologize. Okay, so at first level, your domain spells are Featherfall and Thunderwave.
Makes sense.
Nice. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, those I thought those fit
Yeah,
rather
Storm.
well.
Storm
Mhm.
and Sparrow.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
Then you have to forgive me. I don't have them in level order because they don't give me that benefit when I'm creating in D&D
Yeah.
Beyond.
No worries.
But I believe in second is Enthrall.
Oh,
I don't know if that's second.
I think it is.
And
Yeah, I
Thrall
think it
is I have never even really looked at.
It's a
Enthrall
tricky
before.
one. It's
Yeah.
a tricky
Give it to me.
charm spell.
It's a tricky charm.
A lot
spell,
of
yeah.
rules. Now it's it's very specific.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
It's very specific. Like when it's useful, it's incredibly useful.
Yeah.
But there's often it's very specific.
You
So,
leave a
just-
distracting string of words,
yeah.
causing creatures of your choice that you can see within range and that can hear you to make a wisdom saving throw. Any creature that can be charmed succeeds on the saving throw who can't be charmed succeeds automatically. And if you or your companions are fighting a creature, it has advantage on the save. On a failed save, the target has disadvantage on wisdom perception checks made to perceive any creature other than you until the spell ends, or until the creature can no longer hear you. The spell ends if you are incapacitated or can no longer speak.
It's kind
Yeah,
of
so-
a good role play spell.
It's
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very RP heavy.
Yeah, so how I envision this is a character is putting on their bard hat and they're doing poetry or speaking or maybe in my character's case singing and everyone else can go doo, 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 doo,
Yeah,
doo,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. That makes
Totally.
sense. That makes sense for someone whose song and voice is so enchanting, literally. Yeah.
Indeed. So, in addition to Enthrall, I believe your second level, I can't figure out which one it is.
Tell me.
Shatter or Windwall? I can't
Shatter,
remember.
Shatter
is
is two.
two.
Shatter.
Yeah.
So
Shatter, second
Shatter
level.
would be your second
Yeah.
level spell.
How
Yeah.
dare you
Thrall
not
and
know
Shatter.
Shatter.
Sorry, I didn't know the level right off the top of my head. I apologize.
If
So I have
Katie
two-
were here,
I have
she'd
two
be so
Lily
upset.
traits. I have singing and shatter.
Uh-huh, yep. I mean, and they go along with song, so it makes
do.
sense that those would
Right.
fit together.
And thunder
for sure.
damage. Yeah.
And thunder damage, right? Especially for storms, as we've identified. And then your third level spells are going to be, I want to say it's sending is third, or is that fourth?
Sending is third.
Sending is
Third.
third.
Sending, and I believe wind wall is our third level.
I'm so happy to let someone else have the sending responsibilities. Sending is a job. It is a party
is.
job. It's like
I have
keeping
sending?
the coin.
Yeah, you
Yes.
do.
Yep.
As a domain.
Oh,
As your
I
spell.
domain
remember
spell,
that.
sending and wind wall.
Yeah.
So
Wind Wall is
sending,
fun.
yeah, that makes sense with the sparrows, the communication. and the-
Communication and singing
yeah.
and all that. Yeah,
So
for
is
sure.
Speak with the Dead JT Justice. Yeah. Yeah.
You're right. So is Speak with the Dead. So that will be your.
To be fair,
Oh, yeah.
Jeff also made those incredibly difficult to do. It wasn't like
He did.
It wasn't
Yes.
like those spells are inherently tricky. It just so happens that we
I was
were doing
gonna
lots
say.
of sending because everybody was scattered across the 4 worlds or realms or
Mhm.
lands of Ayn or whatever you want to call it. And the Speak with the Dead, Jeff intentionally read the law of the spell, which is to be cryptic or not answer the question directly. So,
and I love that Jeff did that. However, I have
Yeah.
seen many DMs who were far, and I've seen other shows, I've seen other DMs who let them get away with the yes or no questions, and I'm like,
Yeah.
see.
yeah,
But I love that Jeff
Yeah.
was so tricky about, because as Jared pointed out, the language of the spell is that they don't have to be forthcoming with their information.
Yeah. Also, Morgan, you're too smart.
Hush.
DMs can't just let you get away with that kind of stuff. They know that you're going
Quiet,
to take it
you.
back. You're going to go through the YouTube videos and you're going to be like, oh, yes, this is where it all
Here am I,
correlates.
here am I.
Oh.
I do
And
the
you solve the
homework.
mystery.
Yeah, you're the homework. You're the homework. You're the homework player. Get
Shut
it?
up.
So for
at-
those of you that don't know about Windwall, normally it's a druid ranger spell. So the fact that a cleric is able to cast it is kind of a big deal. It is concentration, lasts up to a minute, and it's essentially a wall of really strong wind. You can make the wall up to 50 feet long, 15 feet high, 1 foot thick. You can shape the wall any way that you choose, which is kind of cool. When the wall appears, each creature that's within the area must make a strength saving throw. A creature takes 3d8 bludgeoning damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. So it doesn't do a ton of damage, because this is a 3rd level spell, mind you. So it's not like it's a fireball or something. But, and this is important, the strong wind keeps fog, smoke, and other gases at bay. Small or smaller flying creatures or objects can't pass through the wall. Loose, lightweight material brought into the wall flies upwards. Arrows, bolts, and other ordinary projectiles launched at the target behind the wall are deflected upward and automatically miss.
I forgot it was automatic. That's amazing.
Boulders hurled by giants or siege engines and similar projectiles are unaffected. So really heavy stuff is still going to get through, but anything small like an arrow or bolt or whatever goes away. And yeah, creatures in gaseous form can't pass through it as well.
Right.
Shucks. All those
shucks.
gaseous vampires that Ron and I are going to throw at you.
Keep him out
Oh, we didn't tell you that it's an entire island of vampires. Whoops.
Yeah.
of gaseous
So-
vampire.
So we
Yeah.
can't do a circular wall like we can with Wall of Fire.
No, you can
can.
shape it.
Yeah,
No, you
can
shape it.
Can.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You can shape it any way. Yeah, that's essentially what
50
it's
feet
saying.
long, 15 feet high. Yeah, you
Ah, I
can just
see,
wrap it
I
around
see.
us.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna make it into a heart shape.
Yeah.
Oh,
Heart
yeah.
shape.
Oh, it only appears in a heart shape.
It does have to be one continuous path along the ground. So you
Yeah.
can shape it, but it has to all connect. It's not like you
Sure.
can do 10 feet here, 10 feet there, and 10 feet over here.
Makes
it all has
sense.
to be one.
Right.
But
It
I mean,
looks like
50 feet's pretty long. That's a
Yeah.
long wall.
And
Yeah.
it looks like it doesn't scale. But if we turns out we love it, then maybe we can talk about, like if subclass particular spells would scale, since that's given based on the god.
Well, there's probably going to be a good chance that Ron and I, since you're doing a homebrew god and a homebrew cleric, are going to have homebrew spells.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna add. It's
Even
definitely.
better.
We've already been discussing that, so definitely, that is definitely already occurring, and I won't ruin any of that because that's gonna be a surprise to you as well. Yep, homebrew gods, homebrew spells, homebrew subclasses, races. We're doing.
Speaking
a
of
lot it.
races, I almost forgot. If you are on our Patreon and you are at the Amulet Dungeon Master tier, Ron is going to post all of the homebrew races on there for you to use in your home game.
Incredible.
That means the 3
Ooh.
types of Ursaka,
Mhm.
the Ramhidi, and the 3 types of Kanusk will all be on the Patreon at the DM Amulet tier.
Mhm.
So if you want to use those, that's where you can find them.
I think we
Nice.
mentioned on the cooldown, by the way, on Monday, Ron, that
Yeah.
can the Ramhidis knit their own fleece into sweaters that they can then wear?
I am assuming that if they shave themselves, which I don't know why they would do so, but if they
right.
did, of course,
Yep.
yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean,
I'm sure there's
what-
probably one of them who's like, you know what? Let's just get a bunch of them together, and now we make clothes, guys. We
what
just
better
grow
show
our
of
own clothes.
affection than to give your beloved a sweater made of your own wool?
Own hair, of course, absolutely, love it. What I'm telling you is, for Christmas, you guys should give your family members hair sweaters.
That's oh no, that's 100% Ramhidi.
100% Ramhidi wool.
Ooh.
Okay, so At
Wow, this
seventh
this
level,
really took a turn.
Dang straight.
at seventh level, Jessica, you will get Dimension Door.
Sweet.
Love
No,
that.
Seventh level of cleric, yes. 'cause
Yes,
it's a
seventh level
spell.
cleric, which is
Yeah.
a fourth level spell. When you get your fourth levels,
Or
so you'll
fifth
get
level.
Dimension Door.
Oh no, it is fourth. Yeah, you're right. It is
fourth.
fourth. Sorry.
Dimension Door and Freedom of Movement.
Yes. Mm.
Freedom
And Freedom of Movement is
Remind
a
me
not
of
often
that?
used
Google
spell.
Yeah, it's
I
underrated.
will
I
It
thought
is
about it.
highly underrated.
There is a warlock invocation that lets you cast it on yourself whenever you want, and I looked
Yeah.
at it for James so many times, and
So
it just never felt very Jamesy. But I looked at it so many times.
It's an abjuration spell that's considered a buff. It's one action, touch range, 1 hour. When you touch a willing creature for the duration, which is an hour, the target's movement is unaffected by difficult terrain, and spells and other magical effects can neither reduce the target's speed nor cause the target to be paralyzed or restrained.
So hold person just gone.
It's the reverse. It's the reverse of hold
Just doesn't
hold person.
work.
Just nothing of that works. So, and in addition, the target can also spend 5 feet of movement to automatically escape from non-magical restraints, such as manacles or a creature that has it grappled. Finally, being underwater imposes no penalties on the target's movement or attacks. Now, the reason I thought this was really good, Jessica, is specifically because there's nothing worse than not being able to reach your holy symbol when you're a prisoner. It's just the worst thing. I can't grab it. I can't hold it high. And I got all these spells that I can use, but I don't have the thing. Well, now you could be in prison and you got a song and all of a sudden now you're out. So I thought that would be a really cool thing for you to be able to maybe one day do.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was what was in my head when I was like, freedom of movement, underrated. I love that spell. I've loved it since
Great
3.5.
spell.
It's such a great spell.
So it's the Disney princess
Yeah.
song.
Yep.
It's the Disney princess moment.
I am free from these manacles.
And the manacles just fall off.
It's funny because the first thing I thought of was exactly just Jules. So Ron is anticipating Jess getting captured. I was thinking about
What?
I was thinking about Fahima, but she was in magical manacles, so this would not have helped her.
Nope, it would not.
What? No, wait. Doesn't it say she can even by magical means?
Non-magical
No,
restraints.
non-magical.
Non-magical
Oh, okay.
restraints.
Yeah, by spells she would be able to get out,
Spells,
but not by
spells,
a
but
physical.
not like a magical manacles, right?
Yeah.
So that answers your question, just Jules. I can just get around it by giving her magical manacles. So there we go.
Here's an interesting question, and maybe this is one of those things that needs to be looked up. Can you be stopped by a sentinel feat if you have freedom of movement on you?
Rules as written? No.
Right.
Well, rules as written. Sorry. Yes.
I was going to say
because
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
No, not no.
It's not
yes.
restrained.
It's not affected by Sentinel, meaning
Yeah.
freedom of movement doesn't prevent
Got
you
it.
from.
That's something I never thought of before, but
'Cause it's not a restraint.
because you're not technically grappled or restrained.
Correct.
You're
Correct.
just stopped.
Yeah. The only way that it would avoid Sentinel is if it avoids all forms of attacks of opportunity or
Right.
avoids being able to move by someone and incur an attack of opportunity.
Now they would not stop. They would still, their speed, the target's speed can't be reduced by difficult terrain or magical effects. So
And
the
Sentinel is
other
neither
part
of
of it
those
is the one
things.
that gives them grappled, so they're immune to grappling,
Yeah,
natural grappling.
right.
We have a couple
Yeah.
folks in chat who are saying it that your speed can't be reduced with freedom of movement, but it does say specifically in the spell
Right.
difficult terrain, spells, and other magical effects can neither reduce the target's speed. It's not an all-encompassing blanket.
Sentinel
from what
isn't
I'm
a
reading.
magical effect. Sentinel isn't a magical
Yeah.
effect. It's a feat, so it's not affected by this spell. Now,
Yeah,
if there was a
100%.
spell that gave
Yeah.
your speed 0, like slow, for example, slow is not going to work on freedom of movement.
Right.
True.
No.
The thing is like how many dungeon masters are going to give Sentinel to their monsters?
Right.
Like
Ron Ogden.
Not my monsters, but maybe my NPCs. Not my monsters, maybe my NPCs.
We know how brutal Sentinel can be.
Yes, we do. And you're right to think that I'm going to use it against you. So get on the lookout for that. So okay,
Yikes.
so
I
you're
have,
nine.
I have a
Yeah, go ahead.
question. I have a question. So speaking of this kind of back and forth that we're having about this very, very particular part of this spell, how are you two going to handle this in campaign 2 when something
Oh,
like
that's
this
good.
comes up?
That's a good question. So the way we've divided up thus far in our planning is that on each session, and it might be several sessions in a row where one person is the pilot and the other person is the co-pilot. But on each session, there's going to be the pilot dungeon master, and they're going to be the main storyteller, and they're going to be the main describer, and they're even going to handle the majority of NPCs. But the co-pilot is going to handle specific NPCs and combat. So when we're in combat, the co-pilot is actually going to be the one calling out rules, whether something works or whether it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That
Having to do a
gives,
quick lookup of something or something.
that
like
gives the pilot free reign to just focus on what is the story, what is happening, what's the setting, where is this going. And while combat is happening, they get to take a nice little mental break. And then when combat is over, they get to come back in and finish the story. Yeah. So that's how
that it's just easier. Like, when you have two pilots on a plane, there's always a pilot and a co-pilot. So it just makes sense. And there may be times, we don't know, there's a lot of flexibility with this stuff where we may switch who's the pilot mid-story because it works that way, that I've worked on that, or Jared has, you know, in those cases. So there may be times where we switch around, but it'll be very clear to all of you because whoever's running the story and the role play largely will be your pilot DM for that particular part.
Cool.
Awesome.
Love that.
Yeah. There's going to be, I'm so excited. Although it's also been like up to now, like Jared and I haven't really fought about anything or like disagreed about anything in a way.
we really wanted to figure out a cool way of killing Morgan's character and making it look
and
like
we were
an accident.
and so we came together on that.
That was
You
how
guys
we
read my
bonded.
texts about that too, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
And thank you for the suggestion because we're going to use it.
I deserve
Awesome.
that.
I've been trying to kill Morgan for years now.
Yeah, we know. Yeah.
We saw
all
that
have. Why do you think it's
unfortunate
happening? Yeah.
Stabbed him.
did.
Civ in 115 episodes did not stab a single player character.
Nope. Did not.
And you play a rogue
Wanted to,
twice,
but did not.
2 episodes
and
it took her.
you shank another PC.
I blame Gabe.
Because the
Gabe.
Rakshasa asks kind of nicely.
Yeah. Hey, do you mind shanking your friend over there? Oh yeah.
Okay,
I was going to do it anyway.
Okay, you Jared, you take one look into the depths of Gabe's dungeon master eyes, and you would do anything that he told you to do.
We'll see.
and threw in some platinum, and it was all over.
Fair.
I was like, well, what was it, like 4 platinum?
It was not even that much.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that much.
I
It was
just-
very little.
I heard shiny thing, and I said yes.
Yeah. You're just looking for an excuse at that point. You're like, I want to shank him, but you have to like sweeten the deal so it makes it look like I don't want to shank him.
You
Well,
thought it
never
was
Can't
respect
shank him for
me.
nothing. You know.
Yeah, I don't get respect until I cut someone.
In your defense, you thought it was just going to be a little cut, and then you rolled a nat 20.
I like the idea that you roll up
Yeah,
on somebody
true.
and cut them, and they're like, you know what? Before that moment, I didn't respect her. Now I do. Weird how that works. Oh, it was my liver.
So Unknown Axiom is saying Civ totally did stab James once. Au contraire, I went mad.
Yep.
And Jeff made me attack him. That is very different.
Correct.
That is
Correct.
very different.
That is not
It's
Sid.
very
Correct.
easily mind controlled because my wisdom score was but yes.
Look, you stab me, I banish you. It's all
Yeah.
water under the bridge.
Really.
By the way, if you didn't know, that is the new score for under 1 hit point or one wisdom is but. That's the new score, but yeah, that's the one.
But
It's basically 0.
3, 2, 1.
But right. So at 9th level, Jessica, I'm only going to reveal one of the domain spells
he's not going to
because
live tonight.
we'll be creating a 5th level domain spell specifically for you as well. But I don't want to reveal that. So the one that already exists is mislead.
I don't know that one.
Mislead.
I'm gonna look that up. I don't know mislead.
Typity.
I mean, how many of us know 9th level spells memorized?
Or it's a 5th
Fifth.
level spell.
Oh, 5th level spell.
Oh,
So it lasts for 1 hour. Concentration. It's School of Illusion. It's a deception.
It's a PHB
It
spell.
only
it's a
has
classic.
it, and it you become invisible at the same time that an illusionary double of you appears where you are standing. The double lasts for the duration, but the invisibility ends if you attack or cast a spell. You can use your action to move your illusionary double up to twice your speed and make it gesture, speak, and behave in whatever way you choose. You can see through its eyes and hear through its ears as if you are located where it is. On each of your turns, as a bonus action, you can switch from using its senses to using your own or back again. While using its senses, you are blinded and deafened in regard to your own surroundings.
Tricky, tricky,
Love
tricky.
that. Love that. I think I did look at this spell for Fahima, but it didn't make sense for her character build to pick something like this.
Indeed. So that
Amaze.
that is essentially what we will reveal today of Stormsong Domain. There'll be more coming as the new season comes out and we start playing. But for now, I think that's pretty good. Wetting of the whistle.
Yeah.
Just curious,
awesome.
Jess, I want to ask you a little
work,
bit.
by the way. Great work.
Incredible.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Very, very well balanced. too.
Without
It's not,
revealing
like,
too
over
much,
the top.
I agree. I don't want to put you on the hot seat, Jessica, or anything like that. But since we're
Do
talking
it.
about your character,
My seat's already hot.
how is she? Now, I think because going through it, my character I started with like a lot of ways that they're very different from James. How is your character similar to Fahima? I'm curious.
Somebody just wrote Fahima farts.
Yeah,
chat.
her farts light her pants on fire.
Yeah.
Fahima farts always keep my seat hot. Let me think here.
I mean, besides the fact that they're also being played by Jessica Lynn Parsons.
Well, I think I have full faith that you guys are going to make entirely different characters. I think you
Oh, sure.
and Katie
Oh, yeah.
and Jessica are all going to be very, very different than what you were in the first season.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually still trying to come up with my character's voice. That's something I'm having a
It's
little bit of trouble
tough.
with.
It's
Yeah,
tough.
because I was a dum-dum and I picked an accent that I wasn't good at and I had to do it for 3 years. So I don't want to do
You were
that again
great.
this year.
It's the Axbright accent. I don't know what you're talking about. That's exactly how Axbright accents sound.
All of that is just Irish that kind of comes and goes.
Sort of
Yeah,
Irish.
so not similar in that she will not be having this accent coming out of her mouth. But she's similar in that there is a missing loved one in her backstory, as I think a lot of D&D characters do. It's great. It's great motivation
Nice.
to, set you out on your adventure. And
I like that.
what else?
See, King 137 says Swedish chef accent.
Oh
God, can you imagine? Can you imagine doing a 3-year campaign with "and I smorgy borgy durgy borgy"?
And also, how are you going to sing like that?
I think that'd be I think you just did it. I think
Your
Yeah,
deity
yeah,
is moved and grants you a boon.
I'm running through my backstory and all my traits that I've put into D&D Beyond, and I really think I've done a good job at making her very dissimilar to Fahima.
yeah.
I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
I've seen the artwork. It is not Fahima.
Oh,
It's a very different.
agree with that. Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I think she will naturally, as I imagine any character. Again, Morgan, I'm just gonna keep harping on you and how smart you are. I think that any character you play will be smart. Even like Ron.
That's funny
obviously,
you say that.
like he played Uggo, who was not intelligent,
But wise.
stats wise, but everyone
Right.
was still like, well, there's intelligence there, right? Like Uggo is dumb, but he's smart, So I think that Fahim or my new character will have this kind of like I feel like what comes most naturally to me in my like easygoing comedic sense of performance is this kind of like wide-eyed, like innocence to the world, and I do like that in all of my D&D characters because I think it's an easier place to start from.
Especially
like
if you don't know the lore. Like
I mean,
Yeah.
Zell is not that. She's not wide-eyed. She's not innocent, and it's a little harder to play because I feel like I have to know the answers to things, and I don't have the answers to things.
Here's what I will say. That's interesting that you say that because I was just thinking about this. I am going the Civ Red Thistle route in that my character is low wisdom, which is kind of
Sucks.
freeing.
It sucks.
It sucks, but it's sort of freeing as
when you
well.
get hit with one of those wisdom saving throws. and
Oh,
you're
I
like,
know.
Wow, game
But-
over, man.
But whenever you're, but also when you're feeling impulsive, like impulsive might be from time to time. When you're
Yeah.
feeling impulsive, sometimes you could just do it.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, just sort of like add thought and go.
Yeah.
I will say this: I'm not playing. He's not a dummy, but I doubt he'll be the smartest character in the party. I highly doubt it.
Well, somebody's got to play the smart one, so y'all need to figure it out.
We'll
Okay, well,
see. We'll see if I'm still the puzzle solver in campaign 2. I don't know about that.
Is Katie's character gonna have high intelligence?
I
We're
don't
gonna be
why.
low int
Because
party.
my character doesn't. My character, I think intelligence is my dump stat as well.
No.
It's intelligence.
That's
is not
like
his
me
dump,
in real
it's
life.
not his dump stat, but it's not a high for him, for sure.
Well, we have other folks.
I was gonna say we
who will
got
be
2 new
joining.
castmates. You're gonna be like, could you make a character?
Hey, wizard.
You mind making some skill
We
choices?
need Arcana and history checks. Get on
Yeah.
it.
Maybe.
Yeah, incredible.
Although the nice thing about 5th edition now is there are cheats around all of those things.
Sure.
Yes, for sure.
There's spells that almost unfortunately negate certain skills or the importance of certain skills. And there's one thing that I'm definitely going to play with in season 2 that I felt like we touched on a little bit in season 1, but I would like to see more of is skill checks.
Sure.
Not only
Yeah.
are there going to be challenges that are skill check based, so it's not just combat or I use this spell and I solve the situation or whatever, but also like the idea of like if you guys are in social situations, let's say you're negotiating with that merchant or with that
Right.
guard or trying to get into the prison or whatever, having those social skills is going to make
Matter.
or break that. Yeah.
It's gonna matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that, and I think that's a tough balance. I mean, because a role play heavy table as we are, you want the role play to mean something. If you're able to have this really wonderful scene, and then you roll like a 3 on your persuasion
True.
check,
Sure.
but it's a balance,
Yeah. But you can also get advantage.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
that's our job as dungeon
Yes.
masters to sit there and go, wow, that song was beautiful.
Right.
Take advantage. Oh,
Right.
you still rolled a 1? Wow. Okay. Well, here's what happened, or here's why.
Or the person hearing it had a bad reaction to it, or
Yeah.
something like it sort of can introduce another
they
another
hate
circumstance.
birds.
Yeah.
All birds.
All birds.
They're the opposite of that turtle that we came across in season 1. What was his name?
Saugus Van Fleet.
Saugus,
There you
yeah.
go.
They're the anti-Saugus.
That's right.
Yeah. So when Jess's character starts singing, they're like, "Oh my god! If she doesn't shut up, I'm gonna crush that little bird's head."
Hey,
Oh,
birds.
dark.
Yeah.
I do want to. I think. I don't know, guys. I mean, we.
I
we
mean,
have
yeah,
covered a lot.
I think we covered it a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think this has been such an amazing night, and Ed was so incredible. I think we have some people to thank.
Yeah.
We
but
do,
yeah,
and before we thank them, I do want to point out that we will be having some new T-shirt merch coming the next week.
yes, we're very excited.
And
it's
it
been
just
much asked for. On
It
the
has
Discord.
been very heavily asked for. Is not yet dropped. I apologize. I was preparing for Ed this week, so and this stuff. So
And a
you
lot
have
of
to
other
forgive me
things.
a little bit. A lot of other things. So,
Yeah.
but it will be dropping the next couple of days, and I'll make sure to drop that on our Discord. But it will be 90% names, 10%.
Yes.
10% costumes,
Costumes.
0% plan. We'll be dropping as a T-shirt, and I may even drop it as other things. I just got to see what's available.
For some reason, I feel like that might be accurate for season 2
it might-
as well.
I think it might be a good mug. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And
I
that-
agree.
That was designed by whom?
Katie Hale. Yes, yeah, incredible work by the artist Katie Hale on our Discord. It was a piece of fan art that we are now turning into a wonderful piece of clothing and other stuff for everyone to own. So we're very excited, and thank you to Katie.
Absolutely.
Before I forget.
Get your DTP shirt.
Oh yeah.
DTP.
DTP's out as well.
DT,
That-
I have it on good authority that one Nassim Etamad has already purchased a
Ooh.
DTP shirt, and
Yeah.
yes, yeah. So
That's a good gamer shirt just in general.
It
for
is,
sure.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
before I forget, this Monday's cooldown is just going to be Ron and I, and
Okay.
a lot like when we did Arcane Artistry before, and we created some stuff unbeknownst to you guys.
In our secret room that we had before, our secret room.
Yeah. And what we just
Don't know what
did
you're
with
talking
Ed, we're going to be creating more things during that cooldown with all of you. So if you're out there in chat right now and you have a chance to tune in on this Monday's cooldown, Ron and I will be creating more things for this world with your input. So you get a chance to influence the world before they even get to step foot in it.
Indeed. Amazing. Amazing. And look out for a new episode of Fortune and Fate 1 week from tonight, episode four of Fortune and Fate, which also will feature the debut of one Jared Kajak.
Which, funny enough, I was preparing for the Ed interview tonight, reading a lot of books and studying interviews and what have you. So I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to be posting on the Patreon, and I might as well post it on Discord as well. What I'd like to do is I'm going to pitch probably at least 3 character concepts, maybe more, but at least 3. And I'm going to let you all vote and decide who I'm going to play in the next Fortune and Fate.
Dangerous.
So, I know. I already know what I'm in for.
Very dangerous.
So, but that's why I'm going to create them and then pitch them. It's not like they get to
I
just
love it.
decide what kind of silly, goofy character I'm going to play. I'm going to have 3 character concepts. I'm going to pitch them to y'all.
Love it.
Y'all tell me what you want me to play.
Also,
Can you play Frick?
I would love to play a goblin.
Ooh.
I would
Can you?
love to
But
play a
can you play
No.
Frick
Can you
specifically?
play Frick?
goblin. Well,
Wait a minute.
I can try.
What was Crick and Frick's lost sibling?
That was. Oh, what was it? Crick, frickin'. Oh shoot. Oh no. What is it?
Someone get Katie on the line.
Dick.
Crick.
Nick, Hick, Lick,
Crick.
Crick?
Frick.
Crick.
Stick.
Stick.
Check
It was,
on it.
It was
Stick.
Stick.
Crick,
Nobody-
Frick, and Stick.
nobody heard what I said. Great.
Did you say Stick?
No, I said prick.
Hey, family show.
That's
Hey,
definitely
Hey,
that's
I
definitely
meant
my character.
prick as
right
in like
there.
your finger with a needle. What are
Yeah.
you
That's-
thinking?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
On Friday the 13th, coming up here in 9 days, both
Ooh.
Morgan and I, back to back, in fact, back
That's
to
right.
back.
I
It
forgot
is
we're back to back.
I'm starting it at noon 30 here in Pacific time, or 3:30 Eastern Standard,
Yes.
and I will be running a one shot
For Jasper's Game Week.
for Jasper's Game Week. Indeed, and then right after that will be Felted Friends with game with Cucumber, and I believe you are the only human player that isn't like the only human celebrity player. Is that correct? Morgan?
Yeah, I take
So we're-
issue with the word celebrity.
I
but
really
yes.
want to know how this happened. Were they just like,
It was-
okay, what player is the most Muppety in real life? And then we're just going to cast them with the real Muppets?
How dare
Like,
you.
what- I
it
want to
was
know, like, what was the thought process? They were
it
like,
was
well,
pitched
Morgan-
to me. It was
Morgan
pitched to me by
clearly
Fenway.
Is part Muppet, so we're just going to cast him in this show.
The amazing Fenway Jones, Teen DM, Fenway Teen DM on Twitter, who is one of the organizers and founder of Jasper's Game Week. They reached out and were like, "We'd love to have you be a part." I was like, "Of course." And they're like, "Cool. We have all these games. There's a few that we think you're right for. What do you think about playing with puppets?" I was like, "Okay." It was
I
their
dare
idea.
you to
I
make like
just
a
said yes.
really dark, brooding, serious character.
Probably
Like
should.
a Batman, like a vengeance paladin, and you're trying to like be serious when there's these crazy
Like a-
puppets dancing around.
a
in front of
tiefling vengeance paladin.
you. Yeah, there you go.
Also, just to let everyone know. Oh, go ahead.
I'm also playing in Jasper's Game Day. I am
Oh,
on,
yay!
I am on the 16th.
Oh, amazing.
So that's
Oh.
Monday, and I am playing in a game. It's not Dungeons and Dragons. It's a game called The Tales of Zadia.
Oh yeah.
It's a brand new system. So
I heard about this.
I've heard it's not too hard to learn. So
Is it sci-fi
Great.
or fantasy or what's the?
yeah.
More details to come on that.
The
Watch out
Dragon
for our
Prince.
social medias.
It's called the Dragon Prince, created
Oh
by
wait, is it
At
based
Boy
off
Monster.
of the cartoon, the anime?
Yes, that's correct. Some people in chat are saying
Oh.
that. Yes, yeah, Dragon Prince
That's
RPG.
that's a
Oh,
great
that's cool.
cartoon.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Fabulous.
But yes,
Yeah.
check out our socials if you for more details on all of that.
And also, just to let you know that May 13th day is star-studded because it starts with Joe Starr, who is, I don't know his actual title with D&D Beyond, but I believe he's a director or something to that effect. Of D&D Beyond, Joe Starr, I've played with him. He's a wonderful human being. Then me, and my table, then Cucumber and Morgan in that table, and then after Morgan will be another
Our amazing
wonderful
friend of the
person,
show, Todd Stashwick, who's playing with Matthew Lillard and Anna Prosser.
Anna Prosser.
Yeah, incredible day.
Mhm.
Star-studded Jasper's Game Week, which, if you don't know, is a charity benefiting suicide prevention and suicide awareness. Something we really, mental health is something we really push for and always support here. So watch those when you can. But we got a lot more coming, and the VOD of this will be Friday on YouTube as per usual.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't spoil anything, you guys. Please. All the stuff that happened that was
Genuinely.
Secret Room with Ed Greenwood, all the stuff that happened when we did Arcane Artistry that we created with you guys on stream, do not post it. Do not hashtag or at us. You can talk to us in Discord privately.
Yes.
Please. No
Yes.
YouTube comments.
Right.
Nothing.
right.
Do you have a secret
Has Dyson
campaign
Capes
too?
created a room for
Yes.
you guys yet? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
Power,
We have
you just must be mad with power.
no casting room. Sure do.
Yeah.
Do.
And
Wow.
Nice.
thank you, DCJ Design, for your bits. I do see
Yes.
that. And thank you for
Incredible.
everyone that gave out
Yes.
bits while we were absorbed
Yes.
in the Ed Greenwood world.
Incredible. And Goofus
Incredible.
McDorkle dropping gift subs as always. You the best.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody. And as we are also hugely supported by our Patreon as well. If you don't know, patreon.com/The Dungeon Run. We've already been talking about some of the amazing things you can get there. We've got merch discounts coming as well for certain levels, and we've got so much more coming as we
You get to
ramp up
decide
for
who I
campaign
play.
2. Get to decide who Jared plays, for instance. But one benefit that is available to some of our lovely higher tier patrons is we read off your names at the end of the show in styles of your choosing.
Hooray.
Hang on, I need to find the die.
You sound so excited just now, Jared. You're like, hooray.
No.
Hooray.
I genuinely. Who is it?
It's me, actually.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
I picked this, so that's all right. Should I re-roll? No, I can do this. You guys help
We
me
can
out.
we can bounce off of whatever.
We
you
got
give
the
us,
list?
too.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. For the suggestion for reading Team Force of Good comes from our beloved Dyson Capes.
Ooh.
For Team Force of Good, as in the style of a Hollywood tour guide to the stars.
Oh no. Oh no. So glad I didn't get chosen for this.
So
Yeah, me
real.
too.
He's so hard not to
So
swear.
real.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Oh, wow.
All right, everybody, step on board for the 3 p.m. Wednesday tour of Hollywood Guide to the Stars.
Is this where Marilyn Monroe stood on top of that crate and then her dress went upwards?
That's
or-
absolutely, it happened here.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
right
cool.
right over there.
Yeah, I
That-
told you, honey. I told you.
I heard
Yeah,
we could see
yeah.
Justin Timberlake's house.
Yeah, Justin Timberlake's house, he actually lives in Lake Tahoe, but you can see it all the way from the hills. Right over there,
Oh.
as a matter of fact, is the very famous Gold family
Oh.
estate. You may know the
Yummy.
Gold family because I don't know.
I believe they were in Bond, James Bond, the Goldfinger family, I think, or is it just
Sure.
the Gold family? Just the
Sure,
Gold family.
Entire
whatever you
family.
say. Whatever you say. And as we make a left here on Braba Boulevard,
The
you will
famous
notice
Braba Boulevard from the Braba TV.
that is correct. Over to your right, you will notice right in front of the Just Jewels Theater, you will see the handprints of one lesbian wolf who
Ooh.
famously, printed their hands and also wrote the very strange Hadrian X message into the concrete
Oh,
in between
yeah.
their hands.
We thought
Honey,
he
that's-
joined a cult.
Yeah, honey, that's the one that was dating Marilyn Monroe for so long that
Oh,
nobody
that's
knew
great, babe.
about.
It's a
great.
mystery that has confounded all of Hollywood for many years. And now over to our left, you'll see the entrance to the classic Whispering Wounds Realm studio.
Wait, is that one of those freaky like wax museums? Is that
That's
what that is?
correct. Madame Tussauds Whispering Wounds Realm. You've really
Oh
given
my
us
God.
a tough one,
Honey,
by the
we
way.
get
I
to
love
see-
you.
We get to see all of the wounds of the celebrities, all the ones that blasted through the
That's
brains. and-
correct.
Yeah,
It's
I
right
don't
next
know
to
if
the Church
I don't
of
know if I want to spend
Scientology.
money for that. You
There's
know?
just so many. There's so many things that happened like that. It's just
Exact
they have to have a whole
replica.
museum.
Hey, do you mind if I drink from my beaker par while we're on this tour?
Oh yeah, no, that is allowed, of course. In fact, actually, pass it over here, would you?
There you go.
Thank you so much. And off to our left side, you'll see Fenderill's house. Fenderill, of course, famous in the in the 1940s. They were the one who created the famous Kitty Scritches cartoon series.
Ironically, also died from kitty scritches.
That's
Got cat
correct.
scratch fever and
That's
fell over.
correct.
It was
Yes,
so
yeah.
sad.
So
it's
sad.
it's called Rubinella. No, what cat scratch fever is called something else. I forget what it is. That's correct. Kitty scritches, ironically, are deadly.
Okay, wait, Mister. So, my daughter here was wondering. She's very shy. She was wondering. She heard of this bunch of YouTubers bought a house. Of the YouTube channel Armando 89. They all bought a house together and they all shoot their videos there.
Yes, I did. We're actually about ready to make a right onto that street right now. Ironically called Your Past Decisions Boulevard. You'll notice the very loud. Very loud house down at the corner. All of their neighbors are very unhappy with them. Oh, and yes, you'll see there is YouTube star Mickey Wolf out front taking a selfie.
Hey,
And-
Mickey Wolf. Hey. I mean, that's the one I was telling you about that looks like Marilyn Monroe.
And Duck, they are
babe.
shooting
Yeah,
whipped
she
cream
does.
at the car. So please, yes,
Oh,
put your
In my mouth.
plastic up.
In my mouth.
But this has been the Gold Family Hollywood Tour to the Stars. Thank you all. Tip your me. And sorry, you got me on that one. Tip your me. And thank you for coming.
Hey.
Oh, Cat Scratch
my
Fever is called Bartonella,
goodness.
according to the Dungeon
Bartonella.
I
Bartonella.
looked it up. They're correct.
Not Rubinella or whatever I call it.
Close. Hey, you had the Nella
Bartonella.
right.
I
you know?
did.
There
You
you
were
go.
one Nella
Did.
away.
We adopted a kitten who had Bartonella. You have to get your cats tested for Bartonella. It is a real thing.
Seriously?
As an owner of 2 cats, yes.
Cat Scratch Fever is a real thing, guys.
It's a
Be
real
careful
thing.
about that. Real thing.
Ted
Really?
Nugent. Ted
Yes.
Nugent was not kidding.
No, he was not. Real thing. I've had
Ted
some
Nugent's
friends who've gotten it.
also
It is no
a
fun.
terrible
It is no
person.
fun. It's terrible.
It must have
See,
a
there you
scientific
go.
name.
It's
Bartonella.
a PSA.
Oh.
This is an educational show. We should
Yeah.
be getting some federal
Correct.
money here.
If you learn anything from
helping the
tonight.
public. Yeah.
Okay. Lastly, for Team Force of Evil, I rolled Civ.
Okay. Cool.
Now, would you please read Team Force of Evil from Thomas Calton? Assembly instructions for knockoff IKEA furniture.
Now's the time to
Whoa.
deploy that Swedish chef accent.
We've gotten some good ones. We've gotten some good
Yeah.
ones in Patreon lately.
Oh, why did I do this to myself? Oh, I should have gone to IKEA, and instead I went to the store. I found out later it was translated into down to clown. That is it was oiji boiji oiji oiji. But if you translate it, it translates to down to clown. And
Oichi boy, joy, joy.
oiji boiji boiji
Yes,
oiji.
okay. Yeah.
Yes.
I'd love. Never been in there. It sounds like a great store.
Oh, it is the best. There's very long lines, but you can walk up into the middle of the line and just break on through. It's called a Lincoln break.
To the
As
other
long as you
side.
have,
yeah.
as long as you have a special card, I have one here somewhere. You show this card, and then they just let you go through, and you can cut in front of anybody. It's very nice. It's very nice. They also have student discounts. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, you have to go to the College of Grimm and be a
Oh.
student of Grimm.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
the best part about the discount is they give you as many nuts as you want. You buy the product, and you know how they give you those little screws, and then they give you the little nuts, and then they give you the little bolts, and they never fit together. They give you bags upon bags of these things, so that if you lose something or whatever, then you can always just reach into your bag of oiji boiji oiji oiji boiji oiji, and then you can put the thing together. But
I think I'm nuts. Considering that hearing all this, I actually want to go to this place. So
You need to go. You need to
Honey,
go.
please, we're waiting to eat dinner until you put the dinner table together.
Oija,
Could
boija,
you
oija,
please-
boijas.
Yes. But if you're going to put it together, I have to let you know that you need a Gorban plaid.
What is a Gorban plaid?
Yes.
What
it's
is
like
that?
it's like a flat device that you put in the groove and you slide it down the groove, and that is how you separate the pieces because they are sort of melted together. It is
So a
very
pair of
poorly
scissors.
designed. No. You need a Gorban plaid.
Gorban plaid.
And
Okay,
oiji
I have a question.
boiji.
Is this a pair of Gorban plaids?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it's
okay.
only half. You just if you take that and you break it in half and you just take the one piece,
That's
that is
one-
a Gorban plaid.
So it's a pair of Gorban plaids.
yes.
I
Well, you
got
don't
it.
need the
That
pair. You
makes
just
sense.
need the one piece.
Right, you just need the one. We got it.
Yes.
I think you picked all of this up in an alleyway, but behind the office. Honestly, I mean
that's wild, man. That's wild.
Wild,
yes.
man.
Well, there was a wild man that left some of these parts that I decided to assemble inside of your house. But the good news is you can return it within 90 days to oiji, as long as you have your receipt.
I don't believe that's a real place.
It is.
I mean, I'm gonna need some references to that
Yeah.
place,
Yeah.
but I wonder. I
It is
do
in a
question.
magical land called Santa Clarita. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
now I understand everything
Yes.
you just said.
That has been our team Force of Evil. Thank you so much to our patrons. Thank you so much to
Thank
you
you.
folks. We love you guys for joining us tonight. This has been such a lovely night. Thanks once again to Ed Greenwood.
Oh,
Thank
my
you,
God,
Ed.
yeah.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, what an amazing night, and we have so much more cool stuff to look forward to as we gear up for more stories and more fun with all of you folks. Anything else we gotta throw out there, folks?
Tune in Monday so that we can
Oh, yeah.
create some
Tune in
cool new stuff
Monday.
for season 2.
More creation. Tune
Yeah.
in next Wednesday for more Fortune and Fate.
Yeah.
We got so much more fun on the way. And for more details for campaign 2, be on the lookout. Join the Discord and join the Patreon. All right. Thank you, loved ones. This has been the Dungeon Run. Have a wonderful rest of your night and rest of your week. What are you laughing at, Jess?
Don't forget to tip your me
Don't forget to tip your me.
on the way out.
Hey!
And lastly, humankind.
Viva!
Viva!
Both.
Love you.
Mwah.
Mwah.
Oija, boija, oija, boija,
Oija,
Oija, boija, oija, boija.
It started. As a simple dungeon run. As a simple dungeon run.